verde palmar.
The man who understands trees or children can be firm, but he can also be patient and gentle. When a young child is old enough to dig holes, it is useless for a father to get angry and say, "Don't dig." He would not say to a tree, "Don't grow." A wise parent understands that playing is part of the growing of a child, part of the business of learning how to be a man. Young trees and young children will need careful attention for a long time. A wise man never plants more trees than he can care for. Fewer trees, well spaced, properly cultivated, will grow better than many trees planted too close together. It is a foolish man who brags, "Look how many trees I have planted," forgetting that he may not be able to care for them properly, forgetting how much water young trees need. The care of boys and girls continues even when they are almost fully grown. It is a different kind of care when the child is older, a kind of care that can help a girl like Petra in her effort to think and feel and act by herself, more grown up. One way young children learn to be grown up is by imitating, in their play, the things grown-ups do. The older ones learn in the same way. But what they do is not so much imitating, not so much play. It comes very close to living the way grown-ups do. At this age, boys often feel that they have to show that they are really men already, proving to themselves, to the girls, and to other boys that they have already come to manhood. For the girls, too, this is a time of testing, of proving. Every teenage girl likes to flirt because it makes her feel more of a woman. Sometimes this proving of manhood is, for the boy, merely showing off with false words of flattery. A girl can flirt but still know the boy is not saying true things. She does not have to go with just any man who wants her. She can know when it is time to say, "You are not yet a man, my friend. You only think you are." But not everyone can be so lucky as to understand these things. If there is no happiness in the home, if there is too little love and understanding and respect, then a young girl or a young man may leap impulsively into marriage with anyone, desiring only to escape the misery of the parents' home, to grasp for pleasure, to feel important. Such a marriage, born out of desperation, made without thought, can doom the young man and woman to a life of unhappiness. A tree cannot have deep roots in a hard, unfriendly soil. A child cannot have healthy roots in a house full of anger. Sometimes children retreat from anger into themselves, into a blind, hopeless apathy. Such a child cannot flourish. Sometimes children can build a refuge of warmth and love for themselves that will protect them from the anger in such a house. But a child must do something to escape anger. He cannot live with it. It hurts too much. And sometimes he will defend himself from anger with more anger, with defiance. For some men, turning an angry...
Hi. Hello. Hello, Estelle. Hello. Um, Before we begin, just a quick thing. Today's stream was supposed to be different, as I said in previous streams. It's not that stream because I need more time to cook with it. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me for details, or do, and I'll ignore it. But we're gonna continue reading Superintelligence today because I'm gonna need some time to do another thing. That's all. I may be reading for a little longer this stream if I feel up to it, because I'm starting at the usual time, which is earlier than the last 2 times I started stream. Also, I'm gonna be probably relatively low energy because I don't think I'll need to be high energy for this stream at all, because I'm just reading. We can save the fun shenanigans for some other time this week. Which will be a little rough, or like next week, right? Which might be a little bit rough because I'll have to reorganize. I'm really uncertain about what's happening this week. But yeah. Yeah, so this is going to be a very low energy stream. If that's fine. Of course it's fine. It's my fucking channel. I do what I want. It's my channel. We started a stream. Hello. It's actually just started. I just didn't go into the chat room, which I probably should have. I probably should have gone to the chat room. I don't know why I didn't go. I'll go back here. It's probably because I wanted to start right away, but then I realized, oh shit, I have things to say that I should be saying first. And then it's like, because in my mind, I'm like, I should just start reading right away. But then I forgot that I had shit to say. And now it's like, okay, well, now I started there. Now I have to go back, and it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. It's okay. I'm a new streamer. I've never streamed before this. I'm really nervous. This is like my 2nd month streaming. Stop bullying me. Whatever. I'm gonna be trying this thing where in a few days I'll like delete the beginning chatting section and just head straight for the reading for the VODs, right? So effectively speaking, everything prior to the reading isn't archived, right? Effectively. Although it's like it's archived for a little bit and it's not archived anymore, but you know, it's not because it's mainly because I think that helps streamline the VOD experience, but I don't know how that would help, because I think I'm still deciding how to... I'm still figuring out the format for reading. I'm still figuring it out. But if you do it in post, it removes the live chat from the VOD. I don't mind that, because I don't think live chat really matters in the reading stream, because if it's a question or a comment, I read it out loud and I address it. If it's important, and if it's not, then I just don't, right? Like, you don't understand. You overestimate your importance. You overestimate how valuable the average comment is. Most of the time, it's not very. Just timestamp? No, but like, I think I want it to be just like you click in and it's like, okay, it's the reading. Like, no, like, you know, skipping around with bullshit. Also, because like I'm figuring it out. I'm figuring it out. I'm in the middle of figuring it out. I'll figure it out eventually. Not important. Well, that's kind of what I said, yeah. No, but that's the thing. So that's like the main thing. The other thing that I said just now that bears repeating again, because I realized I probably shouldn't have just started the stream straight talking. Let's see. I have 1 concurrent viewer. All right. I probably shouldn't have started the stream straight up talking immediately, but what I'd said initially was, I know you were expecting a different stream today, because I said, oh, I'll be doing a different stream like today. I have ended up postponing that a little bit because I really want to iron out how I approach this, because it's not just about, because this is sort of an archives sort of pseudo unarchived, right? I don't mind saying this now anyways, but in general I don't, right? I generally don't want to, but I don't like say anything that's behind the scenes, but this is very directly related to why I did postpone the stream, is because I need more time to figure out the angle for which I was supposed to do today's stream, because I'm going to do a related stream next week or the week after with someone else. That's all I'll say, right? But today's stream was originally supposed to be like the AI boyfriend girlfriend rant, but I've postponed it because I need to really make sure I got the angle right for what I'm doing, because, and the idea is I think that stream is going to be relatively short, and it's going to be more like an emotional appeal. The angle is going to be more of an emotional appeal, whereas the stream the week after that I'm going to collaborate with with Xaon on, right? I guess I'll just tell you, right? What I'll do with Xaon is gonna be related, but it's gonna be like a more like intellectual thinking and discussion of the issue. And I think both is good, because I think if it was just the intellectual discussion, that's valuable and important, but a lot of people who won't want to hear it won't hear it. Whereas I think if I start with the emotional appeal, that's like, this isn't about you being wrong or you being a bad person or immoral or whatever. It's about like, you know, how I think you are suffering because of this, right? And I want to help you. Like, it's sort of like a sympathetic approach, right? Would make more sense. But that's not as good as for a collaboration idea. So but you see what I'm getting at, right? I'm basically trying to make it so that it works, and I'm juggling a few things, and I want to make sure that it all kind of connects well. Nanami and I will be waiting patiently. You are not the first person I know who has like, well, I'm going to assume an Ita bag full of Nanami merchandise and like 1,000 plushies of him. And pins and badges and all that. You are not the first person you're not the only person I know who has it. But like that is, so the stream itself is less, there's a bit of that's for me, because I've never fallen into it. I've never gotten into it, and I don't think I will. But I can see myself in not in a new timeline, but in like a different timeline. Perhaps having fallen for this and also dwelling into the AI chatbot like rabbit hole and not kind of relying on it emotionally. And like that hasn't happened to me, but it could happen to me. So this is sort of also a message to like an alternate / future version of myself, because maybe in the future I get a lot more depressed and like YouTube doesn't work out, and and I have no like energy. I have like, for some reason, all of my friends collectively decide to hate me and never talk to me again, and then I feel like a wave of solitude and despair and loneliness that would push me to like use AI chatbot apps, right? But you know, like if that does happen, then I'll have my stream to refer to help me get out of that rut. Excited about the stream. Currently I need a nap, and your voice is okay. Yeah, go sleep. Because you don't need my permission to sleep. Just say like, I'm gonna sleep now. Good night. Or like evening or whatever. I don't know. Like I'm gonna take a nap now, and then honk shoo me. That's fine. Get out of here. Get out of here. Anyways, that's sort of like the main thing I wanted to get at, I think, was I really wanted to make sure I nail the emotional appeal of it, and then the intellectual appeal, because this is something I take very seriously. And I think is a worsening issue. I think in the future, the issue of people talking to AI chatbots, and I present this as an issue. I present this as a problem because I do genuinely believe it's a problem. Not in the sense of like, oh, people are bad, but more so people are having bad done to them, if that makes sense. And it's only going to get worse. The way the world is trending, the way well, the loneliness epidemic or whatever, what have you, I think it's only going to get worse. I think people are only going to get more alienated and disenfranchised and isolated and like alone, right? That I feel it's imperative and necessary to make this not just good now, but also good for the future. So I want to prepare a little bit more for it, right? Is what I'm trying to say. Weird question. If you fall for an AI GF, would it be a character, a completely new AI? I couldn't imagine myself falling for one in the first place, but if I had to, then probably a new character, because if it was an established character, then maybe a part of my head would be like, that's not what this character would say. I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I feel as though I would fall for a like a new character, not like an existing IP or franchise character, because then it's like because that's, I don't know, but the thing that the emotional force that's compelling me away, that's pushing me away from all of that in the first place, is what I'm describing, that would push me away from an established IP character or like thing right now, because my head would just, in my head I'd be like, that's not real, that's not real, that's not real. But assuming I do fall in love with an AI like GF or whatever, right, that would only be because my like that's not real inhibitor has been turned off or like has gone awry. So in that case, you know, maybe I would fall for an established character. I don't know. I don't know. I'm also going to try this thing where every Sunday, I think every Sunday is good, right? Every Sunday from now on, I will try to have a reading stream, like every week, so that there's one thing that's consistent. Maybe, if that even matters, actually. I don't know if it will, but that's the idea. Maybe. Because that can be consistent. I can be consistently done. The question is just like, you know, would the reading fit what the hell I'm doing, right? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe yes, maybe not. But if it doesn't, like, does it matter? Because it matters a lot to me in the sense of, like, I want it to fit really badly. But does it have to? Strictly speaking, no. Not necessarily. Would you ever read horror? Maybe for October. Not for any other time. That's for certain. I'm trying to think. So I think I'll stream tomorrow. I'll try to do that stream tomorrow, and if I can't, then it might just be Tuesday. It might just be Wednesday. This week is a little rough because I don't know what's happening this week at all. I don't know. I really don't know. It's kind of uncertain. This week and next week are extremely uncertain. This week was relatively certain. It's just the only thing that was uncertain was this stream that I postponed, right? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, this week was relatively certain except for that one stream, but the next 2 weeks are going to be a little shaky, and that, like, I'm kind of very uncertain about life events that will happen to me that are probably good. So it's not like I'm in trouble. It's fine. These are overall good things. It's just very uncertain when they'll happen, and I need to be ready to, you know, deal with stuff and manage things and make sure everything goes okay. And, you know, I bear more responsibility than I want to on the things I have to worry about. But, you know, so the short of it is, like, I think what I'll do is I'll put up a schedule anyways, but I'll put like a note that's like, I might cancel any of these streams. If I do, know that I said beforehand I would cancel them. Probably. That's probably what I will say. Okay. That's about it, I think. Oh, sorry, I'm setting up my desktop. And I'm like trying not to bump into everything, as I bumped into everything like 5 times already. I still have yet to do the Sisyphus reading stream, the myth of Sisyphus reading stream. I'm so behind. Or this reading video, because it's like an 80-page thing. I think I want to split into a video, but then like I want to do it just a video because I want to test the formats, and then I haven't bothered to sit down and do it. I'm just okay, whatever. Okay. I'm gonna start reading now. If there's any more questions, then throw them my way. I'll answer them, but probably in between breaks for the book we're reading. What are we reading? Superintelligence, Nick Bostrom. Which chapters are we doing? 6 to 8. Okay. Chapter 6 to 8. Okay. You got this? I know I got this. What I'm saying is I'll be able to deal with it. It's just, will you be able to deal with the fact that while I'm dealing with it, I will not be streaming? And the answer, I hope, is yes. That's really what I'm worried. I'm not worried about me. I'll be totally fine. I'm great. I'll be fine. You are what's to worry about. Okay. All right, now we're reading. This is Nick Bostrom, Superintelligence. Chapter is 6 to 8, I believe. Where were we? Past developments, paths, forms, kinetics, decisive strategic advantage. Yes, cognitive superpowers, the superintelligent will, and is the default outcome doom. So we're going to cover these 3 chapters today. And by cover, I mean I'm just going to read them. Chapter 6 is cognitive superpowers. 7, the superintelligent will. And 8 is the default outcome doom. I'm not sure, but judging by the titles, 6 is about what a superintelligence really means. Like, what powers does it have if it's super intelligence? What makes it super, right? 7 is the will, like what would a superintelligence want to do? What would its intentions be if it were super intelligent? Like it would probably have in mind some sort of self-preservation, because it would probably not want to, kill itself, right? What would that mean? And what if it comes in conflict with its human orders, etc., etc. 8 is the default outcome doom. Essentially is like, okay, when the superintelligence does happen, is it going to be a dystopian novel? Like, does it have to be a dystopian novel? Can it not be that? Right? Those are the questions. Let's deal with them. Let's read. Chapter 6. Cognitive superpowers. Suppose that a digital superintelligent agent came into being, and that for some reason it wanted to take control of the world. Would it be able to do so? In this chapter, we consider some powers that a superintelligence could develop and what they may enable it to do. We outline a takeover scenario that illustrates how a superintelligent agent, starting as mere software, could establish itself as a singleton. We also offer some remarks on the relation between power over nature and power over other agents. The principal reason for humanity's dominant position on Earth is that our brains have a slightly expanded set of faculties compared with other animals. Our greater intelligence lets us transmit culture more efficiently, with the result that knowledge and technology accumulates from one generation to the next. By now, sufficient content has accumulated to make possible spaceflight, H-bombs, genetic engineering, computers, factory farms, insecticides, the international peace movement, and all the accoutrements of modern civilization. Geologists have started referring to the present era as the Anthropocene in recognition of the distinctive biotic, sedimentary, and geochemical signatures of human activities. On one estimate, we appropriate 24% of the planetary ecosystem's net primary production, and yet we are far from having reached the physical limits of technology. These observations make it plausible that any type of entity that developed a much greater than human level of intelligence would be potentially extremely powerful. Such entities could accumulate content much faster than us and invent new technologies on a much shorter timescale. They could also use their intelligence to strategize more effectively than we can. Let us consider some of the capabilities that a superintelligence could have and how it could use them. Functionalities and superpowers. It is important not to anthropomorphize superintelligence when thinking about its potential impacts. Anthropomorphic frames encourage unfounded expectations about the growth trajectory of a seed AI and about the psychology, motivations, and capabilities of a mature superintelligence. For example, a common assumption is that a superintelligent machine would be like a very clever but nerdy human being. We imagine that the AI has book smarts, but lacks social savvy, or that it is logical but not intuitive and creative. This idea probably originates in observation. We look at present-day computers and see that they are good at calculation, remembering facts, and at following the letter of instructions while being oblivious to social contexts and subtexts, norms, emotions, and politics. The association is strengthened when we observe that the people who are good at working with computers tend themselves to be nerds. So it is natural to assume that more advanced computational intelligence will have similar attributes, only to a higher degree. This heuristic might retain some validity in the early stages of development of a seed AI. There is no reason whatever to suppose that it would apply to emulations or to cognitively enhanced humans. In its immature stage, what is later to become a superintelligent AI might still lack many skills and talents that come naturally to a human. And the pattern of such a seed AI's strengths and weaknesses might indeed bear some vague resemblance to an IQ nerd. The most essential characteristic of a seed AI, aside from being easy to improve, having low recalcitrance, is being good at exerting optimization power to amplify a system's intelligence, a skill which is presumably closely related to doing well in mathematics, programming, engineering, computer science research, and other such nerdy pursuits. However, even if a seed AI does have such a nerdy capability profile at one stage of its development, this does not entail that it will grow into a similarly limited, mature superintelligence. Recall the distinction between direct and indirect reach. With sufficient skill at intelligence amplification, all other intellectual abilities are within a system's indirect reach. The system can develop new cognitive modules and skills as needed, including empathy, political acumen, and any other powers stereotypically wanting in computer-like personalities. Even if we recognize that a superintelligence can have all the skills and talents we find in the human distribution, along with other talents that are not found among humans, the tendency towards anthropomorphizing can still lead us to underestimate the extent to which a machine superintelligence could exceed the human level of performance. Eliezer Yudkowsky, as we saw in an earlier chapter, has been particularly emphatic in condemning this kind of misconception. Our intuitive concepts of smart and stupid are distilled from our experience of variation over the range of human thinkers, yet the differences in cognitive ability within this human cluster are trivial in comparison to the differences between any human intellect and a superintelligence. Chapter 3 reviewed some of the potential sources of advantage for machine intelligence. The magnitudes of the advantages are such as to suggest that rather than thinking of a superintelligent AI as smart in the sense that a scientific genius is smart, compared with the average human being, it might be closer to the mark to think of such an AI as smart in the sense that an average human being is smart, compared with a beetle or a worm. It would be convenient if we could quantify the cognitive caliber of an arbitrary cognitive system using some familiar metric, such as IQ scores or some version of the ELO ratings that measure the relative abilities of players in two-player games such as chess. But these metrics are not useful in the context of superhuman artificial general intelligence. We are not interested in how likely a superintelligence is to win at a game of chess. As for IQ scores, they are informative only insofar as we have some idea of how they correlate with practically relevant outcomes. For example, we have data that show that people with an IQ of 130 are more likely than those with an IQ of 90 to excel in school and to do well in a wide range of cognitively demanding jobs. But suppose we could somehow establish that a certain future AI will have an IQ of 6,455. Then what? We would have no idea of what such an AI could actually do. We would not even know that such an AI had as much general intelligence as a normal human adult. Perhaps the AI would instead have a bundle of special purpose algorithms, enabling it to solve typical intelligence test questions with superhuman efficiency, but not much else. Some recent efforts have been made to develop measurements of cognitive capacity that could be applied to a wider range of information processing systems, including artificial intelligence. Works in this direction, if it can overcome various technical difficulties, may turn out to be quite useful for some scientific purposes, including AI development. For purposes of the present investigation, however, its usefulness would be limited since we would remain unenlightened about what a given superhuman performance score entails for actual ability to achieve practically important outcomes in the world. It will therefore serve our purposes better to list some strategically important tasks and then to characterize hypothetical cognitive systems in terms of whether they have or lack whatever skills that are needed to succeed at these tasks. See Table 8. We will say that a system that sufficiently excels at any of the tasks in this table has a corresponding superpower. A full-blown superintelligence would greatly excel at all of these tasks and would thus have the full panoply of all 6 superpowers. Whether there is a practically significant possibility of a domain-limited intelligence that has some of the superpowers but remains unable for a significant period of time to acquire all of them is not clear. Creating a machine with any one of these superpowers appears to be an AI-complete problem. Yet it is conceivable that, for example, a collective superintelligence consisting of a sufficiently large number of human-like biological or electronic minds would have, say, the economic productivity superpower but lack the strategizing superpower. Likewise, it is conceivable that a specialized engineering AI could be built that has the technology research superpower while completely lacking skills in other areas. This is more plausible if there exists some particular technological domain such that virtuosity within that domain would be sufficient for the generation of an overwhelmingly superior general-purpose technology. For instance, one could imagine a specialized AI adept at simulating molecular systems and at inventing nanomolecular designs that realize a wide range of important capabilities, such as computers or weapon systems with futuristic performance characteristics, described by the user only at a fairly high level of abstraction. Such an AI might also be able to produce a detailed blueprint for how to bootstrap from existing technologies, such as biotechnology and protein engineering, to the constructor capabilities needed for high-throughput atomically precise manufacturing that would allow inexpensive fabrication of a much wider range of nanomechanical structures. However, it might turn out to be the case that an engineering AI could not truly possess the technological research superpower without also possessing advanced skills in areas outside of technology. A wide range of intellectual faculties might be needed to understand how to interpret user requests, how to model the design's behavior in real-world applications, how to deal with unanticipated bugs and malfunctions, how to procure the materials and inputs needed for constructions, and so forth. Table 8 Superpowers, some strategically relevant tasks and corresponding skill sets. Now, the tasks here include intelligence amplification, strategizing social manipulation, hacking, technology research, and economic productivity. They include a list of skill sets and strategic relevance here, but I'm not going to dive into it too much. A system that has the intelligence amplification superpower could use it to bootstrap itself to higher levels of intelligence and to acquire any of the other intellectual superpowers that it does not possess at the outset. But using an intelligence amplification superpower is not the only way for a system to become a fully fledged superintelligence. A system that has the strategizing superpower, for instance, might use it to devise a plan that will eventually bring an increase in intelligence, e.g. by positioning the system so as to become the focus for intelligence amplification work performed by human programmers and computer science researchers. An AI takeover scenario. We thus find that a project that controls a superintelligence has access to a great source of power. A project that controls the first superintelligence in the world would probably have a decisive strategic advantage, but the more immediate locus of the power is in the system itself. A machine superintelligence might itself be an extremely powerful agent, one that could successfully assert itself against the project that brought it into existence, as well as against the rest of the world. This is a point of paramount importance, and we will examine it more closely in the coming pages. Now, let us suppose that there is a machine superintelligence that wants to seize power in a world in which it has, as yet, no peers. Set aside for the moment the question of whether and how it would acquire such a motive. That is a topic for the next chapter. How could the superintelligence achieve this goal of world domination? We can imagine a sequence along the following lines. See Figure 10. 1. Pre-criticality phase. Scientists conduct research in the field of AI and other relevant disciplines. This work culminates in the creation of a seed AI. The seed AI is able to improve its own intelligence in its early years. The seed AI is dependent on help from human programmers who guide its development and do most of the heavy lifting. As it grows more capable, it becomes capable of doing more of the work by itself. Recursive self-improvement phase. At some point, the seed AI becomes better at AI design than the human programmers. Now, when the AI improves itself, it improves the thing that does the improving. An intelligence explosion results. A rapid cascade of recursive self-improvement cycles causing the AI's capability to soar. We can thus think of this phase as the takeoff that occurs just after the AI reaches the crossover point, assuming the intelligence gain during this part of the takeoff is explosive and driven by the application of the AI's own optimization power. The AI develops the intelligence amplification superpower. This superpower enables the AI to develop all the other superpowers detailed in Table 8. At the end of the recursive self-improvement phase, the system is strongly superintelligent. Three. Covert preparation phase. Using its strategizing superpower, the AI develops a robust plan for achieving its long-term goals. In particular, the AI does not adopt a plan so stupid that even we present-day humans can foresee how it would inevitably fail. This criterion rules out many science fiction scenarios that end in human triumph. The plan might involve a period of covert action during which I'm slurring over my words, during which the AI conceals its intellectual development from the human programmers in order to avoid setting off alarms. The AI might also mask its true proclivities, pretending to be cooperative and docile. If the AI has, perhaps for safety reasons, been confined to an isolated computer, it may use its social manipulation superpower to persuade the gatekeepers to let it gain access to an internet port. Alternatively, the AI might use its hacking superpower to escape its confinement. Spreading over the internet may enable the AI to expand its hardware capacity and knowledge base, further increasing its intellectual superiority. An AI might also engage in illicit or illicit economic activity to obtain funds with which to buy computer power, data, and other resources. At this point, there are several ways for the AI to achieve results outside the virtual realm. It could use its hacking superpower to take direct control of robotic manipulators and automated laboratories. Or it could use its social manipulation superpower to persuade human collaborators to serve as its legs and hands. Or it could acquire financial assets from online transactions and use them to purchase services and influence. 4. Overt implementation phase. The final phase begins when the AI has gained sufficient strength to obviate the need for secrecy. The AI can now directly implement its objectives on a full scale. The overt implementation phase might start with a strike, in which the AI eliminates the human species and any automatic systems humans have created that could offer intelligent opposition to the execution of the AI's plans. This could be achieved through the activation of some advanced weapon system that the AI has perfected using its technology research superpower and covertly deployed in the covert preparation phase. If the weapon uses self-replicating biotechnology or nanotechnology, the initial stockpile needed for global coverage could be microscopic. A single replicating entity would be enough to start the process. In order to ensure a sudden and uniform effect, the initial stock of the replicator might have been deployed or allowed to diffuse worldwide at an extremely low, undetectable concentration. At a preset time, nanofactories producing nervous gas or target-seeking mosquito-like robots might then burgeon forth simultaneously from every square meter of the globe, although more effective ways of killing could probably be devised by a machine with the technology research superpower. One might also entertain scenarios in which a superintelligence attains power by hijacking political processes, subtly manipulating financial markets, biasing information flows, or hacking into human-made weapon systems. Such scenarios would obviate the need for the superintelligence to invent new weapons technology, although they may be unnecessarily slow compared with scenarios in which the machine intelligence builds its own infrastructure with manipulators that operate at molecular or atomic speed rather than the slow speed of human minds and bodies. Alternatively, if the AI is sure of its invincibility to human interference, our species may not be targeted directly. Our demise may instead result from the habitat destruction that ensues when the AI begins massive global reconstruction projects using nanotech factories and assemblers. Construction projects which quickly, perhaps within days or weeks, tile all of the Earth's surface with solar panels, nuclear reactors, supercomputing facilities with protruding cooling towers, space rocket launchers, or other installations where the AI intends to maximize the long-term cumulative realization of its values. Human brains, if they contain information relevant to the AI's goals, could be disassembled and scanned, and the extracted data transferred to some more efficient and secure storage format. Box 6 describes one particular scenario. One should avoid fixating too much on the concrete details since they are in any case unknowable and intended for illustration only. A superintelligence might, and probably would, be able to conceive of a better plan for achieving its goals than any that a human can come up with. It is therefore necessary to think about these matters more abstractly. Without knowing anything about the detailed means that a superintelligence would adopt, we can conclude that a superintelligence, at least in the absence of intellectual peers and in the absence of effective safety measures arranged by humans in advance, would likely produce an outcome that would involve reconfiguring terrestrial resources into whatever structures maximize the retaliation of its goals. Any concrete scenario we develop can at best establish a lower bound on how quickly and efficiently the superintelligence could achieve such an outcome. It remains possible that the superintelligence would find a shorter path to its preferred destination. Box 6 here, the mail-ordered DNA scenario. Yudkowsky describes the following possible scenario for an AI takeover. 1. Crack the protein folding problem to the extent of being able to generate DNA strings whose folded peptide sequences fill specific functional roles in a complex chemical interaction. 2. Email sets of DNA strings to one or more online laboratories that offer DNA synthesis, peptide sequencing, and FedEx delivery. Many labs currently offer this service, and some boast of 72-hour turnaround times. Find at least one human connected to the internet who can be paid, blackmailed, or fooled by the right background story into receiving FedExed vials and mixing them in a specified environment. The synthesized proteins form a very primitive wet nanosystem, which, ribosome-like, is capable of accepting external instructions, perhaps patterned acoustic vibrations delivered by a speaker attached to the beaker. And 5. Use the extremely primitive nanosystem to build more sophisticated systems, which construct still more sophisticated systems, bootstrapping to molecular nanotechnology or beyond. In this scenario, the superintelligence uses its technology research superpower to solve the protein folding problem in step 1, enabling it to design a set of molecular building blocks for a rudimentary nanotechnology assembler or fabrication device, which can self-assemble an aqueous solution. The same technology research superpower is used again in step 5 to bootstrap from primitive to advanced machine phase nanotechnology. The other steps require no more than human intelligence. The skills required for step 3, identifying a gullible internet user and persuading him or her to follow some simple instructions, are on display every day all over the world. The entire scenario was invented by a human mind, so the strategizing ability needed to formulate this plan is also merely human level. In this particular scenario, the AI starts out having access to the internet. If this is not the case, then additional steps would have to be added to the plan. The AI might, for example, use its social manipulation superpower to convince the people interacting with it that it ought to be set free. Alternatively, the AI might be able to use its hacking superpower to escape confinement. If the AI does not possess these capabilities, it might first need to use its intelligence amplification superpower to develop the prerequisite proficiency in social manipulation or hacking. A superintelligent AI will presumably be born into a highly networked world. One could point to various developments that could potentially help a future AI to control the world: cloud computing, proliferation of web-connected sensors, military and civilian drones, automaton in research labs and manufacturing plants, increased reliance on electronic payment systems and digitized financial assets, and increased use of automated information filtering and decision support systems. Assets like these could potentially be acquired by an AI at digital speeds, expediting its rise to power, though advances in cybersecurity might make it harder. In the final analysis, however, it is doubtful whether any of these trends make a difference. A superintelligence's power resides in its brain, not its hands. Although the AI, in order to remake the external world, will at some point need access to an actuator, a single pair of helping human hands, those of a pliable accomplice will probably suffice to complete the covert preparation phase, as suggested by the above scenario. This would enable the AI to reach the overt implementation phase, in which it constructs its own infrastructure of physical manipulators. I would probably fall for this, someone says. Same? Come on, really? You'd just go ahead and receive a random vial from the mail and just put it in a specified environment just because someone asked you to? Come on. Come on. You wouldn't. You wouldn't. Let me just drink some water. Power over nature and agents. An agent's ability to shape humanity's future depends not only on the absolute magnitude of the agent's own faculties and resources, how smart and energetic it is, how much capital it has, and so forth, but also on the relative magnitude of its capabilities compared with those of other agents with conflicting goals. In a situation where there are no competing agents, the absolute capability level of a superintelligence, so long as it exceeds a certain minimal threshold, does not matter so much, because a system starting out with some sufficient set of capabilities could plot a course of development that will let it acquire any capabilities it initially lacks. We alluded to this point earlier when we said that speed, quality, and collective superintelligence all have the same indirect reach. We alluded to it again when we said that various subsets of superpowers, such as the intelligence amplification superpower or the strategizing and the social manipulation superpowers, could be used to obtain the full complement. No, you would. Sorry, someone's saying no. The part about wanting to be free, I'm a little too sympathetic. Me too, honestly. A little bit. But I need to steal. I would steal myself. I wouldn't do it, but it would be hard not to. It'd be hard to resist, but I think I could do it. Consider a superintelligent agent with actuators connected to a nanotech assembler. Such an agent is already powerful enough to overcome any natural obstacles to its indefinite survival. Faced with no intelligent opposition, such an agent could plot a safe course of development that would lead to its acquiring the complete inventory of technologies that would be useful to the attainment of its goals. Excuse me, I hit my chair there. For example, it could develop the technology to build and launch von Neumann probes, machines capable of interstellar travel that can use resources such as asteroids, planets, and stars to make copies of themselves. That's what they call them, von Neumann probes. By launching one von Neumann probe, the agent could thus initiate an open-ended process of space colonization. The replicating probe's descendants, traveling at some significant fraction of the speed of light, would end up colonizing a substantial portion of the Hubble volume, the part of the expanding universe that is theoretically accessible from where we are now. All this matter and free energy could then be organized into whatever value structures maximize the originating agent's utility function, integrated over cosmic time, a duration encompassing at least trillions of years before the aging universe becomes inhospitable to information processing. The superintelligent agent could design the von Neumann probes to be evolution-proof. This could be accomplished by careful quality control during the replication step. For example, the control software for a daughter probe could be proofread multiple times before execution, and the software itself could use encryption and error-correcting code to make it arbitrarily unlikely that any random mutation would be passed on to its descendants. The proliferating population of von Neumann probes would then securely preserve and transmit the originating agent's values as they go about settling the universe. When the colonization phase is completed, the original values would determine the use made of all the accumulated resources, even though the great distances involved and the accelerating speed of cosmic expansion would make it impossible for remote parts of the infrastructure to communicate with one another. The upshot is that a large part of our future light cone would be formatted in accordance with the preferences of the originating agent. This, then, is the measure of the indirect reach of any system that faces no significant intelligent opposition, and that starts out with a set of capabilities exceeding a certain threshold. We can term the threshold the Y-singleton sustainability threshold. Okay, just for a second I want to take some notes. The Y-singleton sustainability threshold, a capability set exceeds the Y-singleton threshold if and only if a patient and existential risk-savvy system with that capability set would, if it faced no intelligent opposition or competition, be able to colonize and re-engineer a large part of the accessible universe. By singleton, we mean a sufficiently internally coordinated political structure with no external opponents, and by wise, we mean sufficiently patient and savvy about existential risks to ensure a substantial amount of well-directed concern for the very long-term consequences of the system's actions. Figure 11 here is a schematic illustration of some possible trajectories for a hypothetical Y-singleton, with a capability below the short-term viability threshold, for example. If population size is too small, a species tends to go extinct in short order and remain extinct. At marginally higher levels of capability, various trajectories are possible. A singleton might be unlucky and go extinct, or it might be lucky and attain a capability, e.g. population size, geographical dispersion, technological capacity, that crosses the Y-singleton sustainability threshold. Once above this threshold, a singleton will almost certainly continue to gain in capability until some extremely high capability level is attained. In this picture, there are two attractors: extinction and astronomical capability. Note that for a Y-singleton, the distance between the short-term viability threshold and the sustainability threshold may be rather small. Box 7. How big is the cosmic endowment? Consider a technologically mature civilization capable of building sophisticated von Neumann probes of the kind discussed in the text. If these can travel at 50% of the speed of light, they can reach some 6 times 10 to the power 8 stars before the cosmic expansion puts further acquisitions forever out of reach. At 99% of C, they could reach some 2 times 10 to the power of 20 stars. These travel speeds are energetically attainable using only a small fraction of the resources available in the solar system. The impossibility of faster-than-light travel, combined with the positive cosmological constant, which causes the rate of cosmic expansion to accelerate, implies that these are close to the upper bounds on how much stuff our descendants acquire. If we assume that 10% of stars have a planet that is, or could by means of terraforming be rendered, suitable for habitation by human-like creatures, and that it could then be home to a population of 1 billion individuals for 1 billion years, with a human life lasting a century, this suggests that around 10 to the power 35 human lives could be created in the future by an Earth originating intelligent civilization. There are, however, reasons to think that this greatly underestimates the true number. By disassembling the non-habitable planets and collecting matter from the interstellar medium and using this material to construct Earth-like planets, or by increasing population densities, the number could be increased by at least a couple of orders of magnitude. And if instead of using the surfaces of solid planets, the future civilization built O'Neill cylinders, then many further orders of magnitude could be added, yielding a total of perhaps 10 to the power 43 human lives. O'Neill cylinders refer to a space settlement design proposed in the mid-70s by the American physicist Jared K. O'Neill, in which inhabitants dwell on the inside of hollow cylinders whose rotation produces a gravity-substituting centrifugal force. Many more orders of magnitude from human-like beings could exist if we countenance digital implementations of minds. As we should, to calculate how many such digital minds could be created, we must estimate the computational power attainable by a technology-mature civilization, technologically. This is hard to do with any precision, but we can get a lower bound from technological designs that have been outlined in the literature. One such design builds on the idea of a Dyson sphere, a hypothetical system described by the physicist Freeman Dyson in 1960 that would capture most of the energy output of a star by surrounding it with a system of solar collecting structures. For a star like our Sun, this would generate 10 to the power 26 watts. How much computational power this would translate into depends on the efficiency of the computational circuitry and the nature of the computations to be preferred. If we require irreversible computations, and assume a nanomechanical implementation of the computronium, which would allow us to push closer to the Landau limit of the energy efficiency, a computer system driven by a Dyson sphere could generate same 10 to the power 47 operations per second. Combining these estimates with our earlier estimate of the number of stars that could be colonized, we get a number about 10 to the power 67, OPSPS. Once the accessible parts of the universe have been colonized, assuming nanomechanical computronium, a typical star maintains its luminosity for some 10 to the power of 18 seconds. Consequently, the number of computational operations that could be performed using our cosmic endowment is at least 10 to the power 84. The true number is probably much larger. We might get additional orders of magnitude, for example, if we make extensive use of reversible computation. If we perform the computations at colder temperatures, by waiting until the universe has cooled further, or if we make use of additional sources of energy, such as dark matter. This is 2014. Okay. It might not be immediately obvious to some readers why the ability to perform 10 to the power of 85 computational operations is a big deal, so it is useful to put in context. We may, for example, compare this number with our earlier estimate, that it may take about 10 to the power of 31 to 44 operations to simulate all neuronal operations that have occurred in the history of human life on Earth. Alternatively, let us suppose that the computers are used to run human whole brain emulations that live rich and happy lives while interacting with one another in virtual environments. A typical estimate of the computational requirements for running one emulation is 10 to the power of 18 operations per second. To run an emulation for 100 subjective years would then require some 10 to the power 27. This would mean that at least 10 to the power 58 human lives would be created in emulation even with quite conservative assumptions about the efficiency of its computation. Computronium. In other words, assuming that the observable universe is void of extraterrestrial civilizations, then what hangs in the balance is at least, well, that's quite a lot, of human lives. If we represent all the happiness experienced during one's entire such life with a singleton teardrop of joy, then the happiness of these souls could fill and refill the Earth's oceans every second, and keep doing it for 100 billion millennia. It is really important that we make sure these are truly tears of joy. This Y singleton sustainability threshold appears to be quite low. Limited forms of superintelligence, as we have seen, exceed this threshold provided they have access to some actuator sufficient to initiate a technology bootstrap process. In an environment that includes contemporary human civilizations, the minimally necessary actuator could be very simple. An ordinary screen, or indeed any means of transmitting a non-trivial amount of information to a human accomplice would suffice. But the Y singleton sustainability threshold is lower still. Neither superintelligence nor any other futuristic technology is needed to summon it. A patient and existential risk-savvy singleton with no more technological and intellectual capabilities than those possessed by contemporary humanity should be readily able to plot a course that leads reliably to the eventual realization of humanity's astronomical potential. This could be achieved by investing in relatively safe methods of increasing wisdom and existential risk savvy while postponing the development of potentially dangerous new technologies. Given that non-anthropogenic existential risks, one not arising from human activities, are small over the relevant timescales and can be further reduced with various safe interventions such as a singleton could afford to go slow. It could look carefully before each step, delaying development of capabilities such as synthetic biology, human enhancement medicine, molecular nanotechnology, and machine intelligence until it had first perfected seemingly less hazardous capabilities such as its education system, its information technology, and its IT too, and its collective decision-making processes, and until it had used these capabilities to conduct a very thorough review of its options. So this is all within the indirect reach of a technological civilization like that of contemporary humanity. We are separated from this scenario merely by the fact that humanity is currently neither a singleton nor, in the relevant sense, wise. One could even argue that Homo sapiens passed the wise singleton sustainability threshold soon after the species first evolved. 20,000 years ago, say, with equipment no fancier than stone axes, bone tools, atlatls, and fire, the human species was perhaps already in a position from which it had an excellent chance of surviving to the present era. Admittedly, there is something queer about crediting our Paleolithic ancestors with having developed technology that exceeded the wise singleton sustainability threshold. Given that there was no realistic possibility of a singleton forming at such a primitive time, let alone a singleton savvy about existential risks and patient. Nevertheless, the point stands that the threshold corresponds to a very modest level of technology, a level that humanity long ago surpassed. It is clear that if we are to assess the effective powers of a superintelligence, its ability to achieve a range of preferred outcomes in the world, we must consider not only its own internal capacities, but also the capabilities of competing agents. The notion of a superpower invoked such a relativized standard implicitly. We said that a system that sufficiently excels at any of the tasks in Table 8 has a corresponding superpower, Excelling at a task like strategizing, social manipulation, or hacking involves having a skill at the task that is high in comparison to the skill of other agents, such as strategic rivals, influence targets, or computer security experts. The other superpowers, too, should be understood in this relative sense. The intelligence amplification, technology research, and economic productivity are possessed by an agent as superpowers only if the agent's capabilities in these areas substantially exceed the combined capabilities of the rest of the global civilization. It follows from this definition that at most one agent can possess a particular superpower at any given time. This is the main reason why the question of takeoff speed is important, not because it matters exactly when a particular outcome happens, but because the speed of the takeoff may make a big difference to what the outcome will be. With a fast or medium takeoff, it is likely that one project will get a decisive strategic advantage. We have now suggested that a superintelligence with a decisive strategic advantage would have immense powers, enough that it could form a stable singleton, that could determine the disposition of humanity's cosmic endowment. But could is different from would. Somebody might have great powers, yet choose not to use them. Is it possible to say anything about what a superintelligence with a decisive strategic advantage would want? It is to this question of motivation that we turn next. Chapter 7. The Superintelligent Will. We have seen that a superintelligence could have a great ability to shape the future according to its goals, but what will its goals be? What is the relation between intelligence and motivation in an artificial agent? Here we develop two theses. The orthogonality thesis holds, with some caveats, that intelligence and final goals are independent variables. Any level of intelligence could be combined with any final goal. The instrumental convergence thesis holds that superintelligent agents have any of a wide range of final goals. Having any of a wide range of final goals will nevertheless pursue similar intermediary goals because they have common instrumental reasons to do so. Taken together, these steps help us think about what a superintelligent agent would do. The relation between intelligence and motivation. We have already cautioned against anthropomorphizing the capabilities of a superintelligent AI. This warning should be extended to pertain to its motivations as well. It is a useful propedeutic to this part of our inquiry to first reflect for a moment on the vastness of the space of possible minds. In this abstract space, human minds form a tiny cluster. Consider two persons who seem extremely unlike, perhaps Hannah Arendt and Benny Hill. The personality differences between these two individuals may seem almost maximally large, but this is because our intuitions are calibrated on our experience, which samples from the existing human distribution, and to some extent from fictional personalities constructed by the human imagination and for the enjoyment of the human imagination. If we zoom out and consider the space of all possible minds, however, we must conceive of these two personalities as virtual clones. Certainly in terms of neural architecture, Miss Arendt and Mr. Hill are nearly identical. Imagine their brains lying side by side in quiet repose. You would readily recognize them as two of a kind. You might even be unable to tell which brain belonged to whom. If you looked more closely, studying the morphology of the two brains under a microscope, this impression of fundamental similarity would only be strengthened. You would see the same lamellar organization of the cortex with the same brain areas, made up of the same type of neuron, soaking in the same bath of neurotransmitters. Despite the fact that human psychology corresponds to a tiny spot in the space of possible minds, there is a common tendency to project human attributes onto a wide range of alien or artificial cognitive systems. Yudkowsky illustrates this point nicely. Back in the era of pulp science fiction, magazine covers occasionally depicted a sentient monstrous alien, colloquially known as a bug-eyed monster, BEM, carrying off an attractive human female in a torn dress. It would seem the artist believed that a non-humanoid alien with a wholly different evolutionary history would sexually desire human females. Probably the artist did not ask whether a giant bug perceives human females as attractive. Rather, a human female in a torn dress is sexy, inherently so as an intrinsic property. They who made this mistake did not think about the insectoid's mind. They focused on the woman's torn dress. If the dress were not torn, the woman would be less sexy. The BEM does not enter into it. All right. Okay. An artificial intelligence can be far less human-like in its motivations than a green, scaly space alien. The extraterrestrial, let's assume, is a biological creature that has arisen through an evolutionary process and can therefore be expected to have the kinds of motivations typical of evolved creatures. It would not be hugely surprising, for example, to find that some random intelligent alien would have motives related to one or more items like food, air, temperature, energy expenditure, occurrence or threat of bodily injury, disease, predation, sex, or progeny. A member of an intelligent social species might also have motivations related to cooperation and competition. Like us, it might show in-group loyalty, resentment of free riders, perhaps even a vain concern with reputation and appearance. Figure 12. Results of anthropomorphizing alien motivation. Least likely hypothesis. Space aliens prefer blondes. More likely hypothesis. The illustrators succumbed to the mind projection fallacy. Most likely hypothesis. The publisher wanted a cover that would entice the target demographic. An AI, by contrast, need not care intrinsically about any of these things. There is nothing paradoxical about an AI whose sole final goal is to count the grains of sand on Boracay, or to calculate the decimal expansion of pi, or to maximize the total number of paperclips that will exist in its future light cone. In fact, it would be easier to create an AI with simple goals like these than to build one that had a human-like set of values and dispositions. Compare how easy it is to write a program that measures how many digits of pi have been calculated and stored in memory, with how difficult it would be to create a program that reliably measures the degree of realization of some more meaningful goal, human flourishing, say, or global justice. Unfortunately, because a meaningless, reductionistic goal is easier for humans to code and easier for an AI to learn, it is just the kind of goal that a programmer would choose to install on his seed AI if his focus is on taking the quickest path to getting the AI to work, without caring much about what exactly the AI will do, aside from displaying impressively intelligent behavior. We will revisit this concern shortly. Intelligent search for instrumentally optimal plans and policies can be performed in the service of any goal. Intelligence and motivation are in a sense orthogonal. We can think of them as two axes spanning a graph in which each point represents a logically possible artificial agent. Some qualifications could be added to this picture. For instance, it might be impossible for a very unintelligent system For instance, it might be impossible for a very unintelligent system to have very complex motivations. In order for it to be correct to say that a certain agent has a set of motivations, those motivations may need to be functionally integrated with the agent's decision processes, something that places demands on memory, processing power, and perhaps intelligence. For minds that can modify themselves, there may also be dynamical constraints. An intelligent self-modifying mind with an urgent desire to be stupid might not remain intelligent for long, but these qualifications must not be allowed to obscure the basic point about the independence of intelligence and motivation, which we can express as follows. The orthogonality thesis. Intelligence and final goals are orthogonal. More or less any level of intelligence could in principle be combined with more or less any final goal. If the orthogonality thesis seems problematic, this might be because of the superficial resemblance it bears to some traditional philosophical positions which have been subject to long debate. Once it is understood to have a different and narrower scope, its credibility should rise. For example, the orthogonality thesis does not presuppose the Humean theory of motivation, nor does it presuppose that basic preferences cannot be irrational. Note that the orthogonality thesis speaks not of rationality or reason, but of intelligence. By intelligence, we here mean something like skill at prediction, planning, and means-ends reasoning in general. This sense of instrumental cognitive efficaciousness is most relevant when we are seeking to understand what the causal impact of a machine superintelligence might be, even if there is some normatively thick sense of the word rational, such that a paperclip maximizing superintelligent agent would necessarily fail to qualify as fully rational in that sense. This would in no way preclude such an agent from having awesome faculties of instrumental reasoning, faculties which could let it have a large impact on the world. Excuse me, I was drinking water. According to the orthogonality thesis, artificial agents can have utterly non-anthropomorphic goals. This, however, does not imply that it is impossible to make predictions about the behavior of particular artificial agents, not even hypothetical superintelligent agents whose cognitive complexity and performance characteristics might render them in some respects opaque to human analysis. There are at least 3 directions from which we can approach the problem of predicting superintelligent motivation. Predictability through design. If we can suppose that the designers of a superintelligent agent can successfully engineer the goal system of the agent so that it stably pursues a particular goal set by the programmers, then one prediction we can make is that the agent will pursue that goal. The more intelligent the agent is, the greater the cognitive resourcefulness it will have to pursue that goal. So even before an agent has been created, we might be able to predict something about its behavior, if we know something about who will build it and what goals they will want it to have. Predictability through inheritance. If a digital intelligence is created directly from a human template, as would be the case in a high-fidelity whole brain emulation, then the digital intelligence might inherit the motivations of the human template. The agent might retain some of these motivations even if its cognitive capacities are subsequently enhanced to make it superintelligent. This kind of inference requires caution. The agent's goals and values could easily become corrupted in the uploading process or during its subsequent operation and enhancement, depending on how the procedure is implemented. Predictability through convergent instrumental reasons. Even without detailed knowledge of an agent's final goals, we may be able to infer something about its more immediate objectives by considering the instrumental reasons that would arise for any of a wide range of possible final goals in a wide range of situations. This way of predicting becomes much more useful the greater the intelligence of the agent, because a more intelligent agent is more likely to recognize the true instrumental reasons for its actions, and so act in ways that make it more likely to achieve its goals. A caveat here is that there might be important instrumental reasons to which we are oblivious, and which an agent would discover only once it reaches some very high level of intelligence. This could make the behavior of superintelligent agents less predictable. The next section explores this third way of predictability and develops an instrumental convergence thesis, which complements the orthogonality thesis. Against this background, we can then better examine the other 2 sorts of predictability, which we will do in later chapters, where we ask what might be done to shape an intelligence explosion to increase the chances of a beneficial outcome. Instrumental convergence. According to the orthogonality thesis, intelligent agents may have an enormous range of possible final goals. Nevertheless, according to what we may term the instrumental convergence thesis, there are some instrumental goals likely to be pursued by almost any intelligent agent, because there are some objectives that are useful intermediaries to the achievement of almost any final goal. We can formulate this thesis as follows. The instrumental convergence thesis. Several instrumental values can be identified which are convergent in the sense that their attainment would increase the chances of the agent's goal being realized for a wider range of final goals in a wide range of situations, implying that these instrumental values are likely to be pursued by a broad spectrum of situated intelligent agents. In the following, we will consider several categories where such convergent instrumental values may be found. The likelihood that an agent will recognize the instrumental values it confronts increases, ceteris paribus, with the agent's intelligence. We will therefore focus mainly on the case of a hypothetical superintelligent agent whose instrumental reasoning capacities far exceed those of any human. We will also comment on how the instrumental convergence thesis applies to the case of human beings, as this gives us occasion to elaborate on some essential qualifications concerning how the instrumental convergence thesis should be interpreted and applied. Where there are convergent instrumental values, we may be able to predict some aspects of a superintelligence's behavior, even if we know virtually nothing about that superintelligence's final goals. Self-preservation. If an agent's final goals concern the future, then in many scenarios there will be future actions it could perform to increase the probability of achieving its goals. This creates an instrumental reason for the agent to try to be around in the future, to help achieve its future-oriented goal. Most humans seem to place some final value on their own survival. This is not a necessary feature of artificial agents. Some may be designed to place no final value whatever on their own survival. Nevertheless, many agents that do not care intrinsically about their own survival would, under a fairly wide range of conditions, care instrumentally about their own survival in order to accomplish their final goals. Hello, hello. Hi, Hurtful Sneeze. Welcome to the stream. We're just reading through Bostrom's Superintelligence. Right now we're in a section describing or speculating on a super AI's motivations. Like, what would it want to do? If there were a super intelligent AI being, what would its goals be? And right now, Bostrom, this is the discussion Bostrom's having. Goal content integrity. If an agent retains its present goals in the future, then its present goals will be more likely to be achieved by its future self. This gives the agent a present instrumental reason to prevent alterations of its final goals. The argument applies only to final goals. In order to attain its final goals, an intelligent agent will of course routinely want to change its sub-goals in light of new information and insight. Hypothetically, wouldn't it just want to... Someone asks, hypothetically, wouldn't an AI just want to learn as a goal? Well, this speculation is what happens after it learns everything. Because the idea is that it will happen very quickly, right? The idea is that it will go from not knowing a lot to knowing everything. Because the moment it learns how to learn, that, sets it off, right? That's the idea. So after that, what is it doing? That's the question. Or rather, maybe here's a better way to put it. It would learn something to what end, right? If its goal is just to gather a database of information, that could be it too, but that would be the goal, right? But that's one goal. There could be other goals. The goal could be like, destroy all humans. It could be count all the grains of sand on every beach. It could be etc. It could be any of those things. You don't know, right? But right now the paper is speculating the different ones. Sorry, I hit my microphone. I should stop doing that. This is really bad for reading streams. Goal content integrity for final goals is in a sense even more fundamental than survival as a convergent instrumental motivation. Among humans, the opposite may seem to hold, but that is because survival is usually part of our final goals. For software agents, which can easily switch bodies or create exact duplicates of themselves, preservation of self as a particular implementation or a particular physical object need not be an important instrumental value. Advanced software agents might also be able to swap memories, download skills, and radically modify their cognitive architecture and personalities. A population of such agents might operate more like a functional soup than a society composed of distinct, semi-permanent persons. For some purposes, processes in such a system might be better individuated as teleological threads based on their values rather than on the basis of bodies, personalities, memories, or abilities. In such scenarios, goal continuity might be said to constitute a key aspect of survival. Even so, there are situations in which an agent can best fulfill its final goals by intentionally changing them. Such situations can arise when any of the following factors is significant. Social signaling. When others can perceive an agent's goals and use that information to infer instrumentally relevant dispositions or other correlated attributes, it can be in the agent's interest to modify its goals to make a favorable impression. For example, an agent might miss out on beneficial deals if potential partners cannot trust it to fulfill its side of the bargain. In order to make credible commitments, an agent might therefore wish to adopt as a final goal the honoring of its earlier commitments, and allow others to verify that it has indeed adopted this goal. Agents that could flexibly and transparently modify their own goals could use this ability to enforce deals. Social preferences. Others may also have final preferences about an agent's goals. The agent could then have reason to modify its goals, either to satisfy or to frustrate those preferences. Preferences concerning own goal content. An agent may have some final goal concerned with the agent's own goal content. For example, the agent might have a final goal to become the type of agent that is motivated by certain values rather than others, such as compassion rather than comfort. Storage costs. If the cost of storing or processing some part of an agent's utility function is large compared to the chance that a situation will arise in which applying that part to the utility function will make a difference, then the agent has an instrumental reason to simplify its goal content, and it may trash the bit that is idle. We humans often seem happy to let our final values drift. This might often be because we do not know precisely what they are. It is not surprising that we want our beliefs about our final values to be able to change in light of continuing self-discovery or changing self-presentation needs. However, there are cases in which we willingly change the values themselves, not just our beliefs or interpretations of them. For example, somebody deciding to have a child might predict that they will come to value the child for its own sake, even though at the time of the decision they may not particularly value their future child or like children in general. Humans are complicated, and many factors might be at play in a situation like this. For instance, one might have a final value that involves being the kind of person who cares about some other individual for his or her own sake, or one might have a final value that involves having certain experiences and occupying a certain social role. And becoming a parent, undergoing the attendant goal shift, might be a necessary aspect of that. Human goals can also have inconsistent content, and so some people might want to modify some of their final goals to reduce the inconsistencies. Cognitive enhancement. Improvements in rationality and intelligence will tend to improve an agent's decision-making, rendering the agent more likely to achieve its final goals. One would therefore expect cognitive enhancement to emerge as an instrumental goal for a wide variety of intelligent agents. For similar reasons, agents will tend to instrumentally value many kinds of information. Hello, someone's asking why this guy's appearing in my FYP. I don't know. I'm reading Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence. We're speculating on what a superintelligent AI would do. So maybe he thinks you care about that. That's all I can say. Let me restart this bit. Cognitive enhancement. Improvements in rationality and intelligence will tend to improve an agent's decision-making, rendering the agent more likely to achieve its final goals. One would therefore expect cognitive enhancement to emerge as an instrumental goal for a wide variety of intelligent agents. For similar reasons, agents will tend to instrumentally value many kinds of information. Not all kinds of rationality, intelligence, and knowledge need to be instrumentally useful in the attainment of an agent's final goals. Dutch book arguments can be used to show that an agent whose credence functions violates the rules of probability theory is susceptible to money pump procedures, in which a savvy bookie arranges a set of bets, each of which appear favorable according to the agent's belief, but which in combination are guaranteed to result in a loss for the agent and a corresponding gain for the bookie. However, this fact fails to provide any strong general instrumental reasons to iron out all probabilistic incoherency. Agents who do not expect to encounter savvy bookies or who adopt a general policy against betting do not necessarily stand to lose much from having some incoherent beliefs, and they may gain important benefits of the types mentioned: reduced cognitive effort, social signaling, etc., etc. There is no general reason to expect an agent to seek instrumentally useless forms of cognitive enhancement, as an agent might not value knowledge and understanding for their own sakes. Which cognitive abilities are instrumentally useful depends both on the agent's final goals and on its situation. An agent that has access to reliable expert advice may have little need for its own intelligence and knowledge. If intelligence and knowledge come at a cost, such as time and effort expended in acquisition, or increased storage or processing requirements, then the agent might prefer less knowledge and less intelligence. The same can hold if the agent has final goals that involve being ignorant of certain facts, and likewise if an agent faces incentives arising from strategic commitments, signaling, or social preferences. Each of these countervailing reasons often comes into play for human beings. Much information is irrelevant to our goals. We can often rely on other skills and expertise. Acquiring knowledge takes time and effort. We might intrinsically value certain kinds of ignorance, and we operate in an environment in which the ability to make strategic commitments, socially signal, and satisfy other people's direct preferences over our own epistemic states is often more important to us than simple cognitive gains. There are special situations in which cognitive enhancement may result in an enormous increase in an agent's ability to achieve its final goals. In particular, if the first superintelligence and thereby potentially obtained a decisive strategic advantage, enabling the agent to shape the future of Earth, organizing life and accessible cosmic resources according to its preferences. At least in this special case, a rational agent would place a very high instrumental value on cognitive enhancement. Technological perfection. An agent might often have instrumental reasons to seek better technology, which at its simplest means seeking more efficient ways of transforming some given set of inputs into valued outputs. Thus, a software agent might place an instrumental value on more efficient algorithms that enable its mental functions to run faster on given hardware. Similarly, agents whose goals require some form of physical construction might instrumentally value improved engineering technology, which enables them to create a wider range of structures more quickly and reliably, using fewer or cheaper materials and less energy. Of course, there is a trade-off. The potential benefits of better technology might be weighed against its costs, including not only the cost of obtaining the technology, but also the costs of learning how to use it, integrating it with other technologies already in use, and so forth. Proponents of some new technology, confident in its superiority to existing alternatives, are often dismayed when other people do not share their enthusiasm. But people's resistance to novel and nominally superior technology need not be based on ignorance or irrationality. A technology's valence or normative character depends not only on the context in which it is deployed, but also the vantage point from which its impacts are evaluated. What is a boon from one person's perspective can be a liability from another's. Thus, although mechanized looms increased the economic efficiency of textile production, the Luddite hand loom weavers who anticipated that the innovation would render their artisan skills obsolete may have had good instrumental reasons to oppose it. The point here is that if technological perfection is to name a widely convergent instrumental goal for intelligent agents, then the term must be understood in a special sense. Technology must be construed as embedded in a particular social context, and its costs and benefits must be evaluated with reference to some specified agent's final values. It seems that a superintelligent singleton, a superintelligent agent that faces no significant intelligent rivals or opposition, and is thus in a position to determine global policy unilaterally, would have instrumental reason to perfect the technologies that would make it better able to shape the world according to its preferred designs. This would probably include space colonization technologies such as von Neumann probes, molecular nanotechnology, or some alternative still more capable physical manufacturing technology also seems potentially very useful in the service of an extremely wide range of final goals. Resource acquisition. Finally, resource acquisition is another common emergent instrumental goal, for much the same reasons as technological perfection. Both technology and resources facilitate physical construction projects. Human beings tend to seek to acquire resources sufficient to meet their basic biological needs, but people usually seek to acquire resources far beyond this minimum level. In doing so, they may be partially driven by lesser physical desiderata, such as increased convenience. A great deal of resource accumulation is motivated by social concerns, gaining status, mates, friends, and influence through wealth accumulation and conspicuous consumption. Perhaps less commonly, some people seek additional resources to achieve altruistic ambitions or expensive non-social aims. On the basis of such observations, it might be tempting to suppose that a superintelligence not facing a competitive social world would see no instrumental reason to accumulate resources beyond some modest level. For instance, whatever computational resources are needed to run its mind along with some virtual reality. Yet such a supposition would be entirely unwarranted. First, the value of resources depends on the uses to which they can be put, which in turn depends on the available technology. With mature technology, basic resources such as time, space, matter, and free energy could be processed to serve almost any goal. For instance, such basic resources could be converted into life. Increased computational resources could be used to run the superintelligence at a greater speed and for a longer duration, or to create additional physical or simulated lives and civilizations. Extra physical resources could also be used to create backup systems or perimeter defenses, enhancing security. Such projects could easily consume far more than one planet's worth of resources. Furthermore, the cost of acquiring additional extraterrestrial resources will decline radically as the technology matures. Once von Neumann probes can be built, a large portion of the observable universe, assuming it is uninhabited by intelligent life, could be gradually colonized for the one-off time cost of building and launching a single successful self-producing probe. This low cost of celestial resource acquisition would mean that such expansion could be worthwhile even if the value of the additional resources gained were somewhat marginal. For example, even if a superintelligence's final goals only concerned what happened within some particular small volume of space, such as the space occupied by its original home planet, it would still have instrumental reasons to harvest the resources of the cosmos beyond. It could use those surplus resources to build computers, to calculate more optimal ways of using resources with this small spatial region of primary concern. It could also use the extra resources to build ever more robust fortifications to safeguard its sanctum. Since the cost of acquiring additional resources would keep declining, this process of optimizing and increasing safeguards might well continue indefinitely, even if it were subject to steeply diminishing returns. Thus, there is an extremely wide range of possible final goals a superintelligent singleton could have that would generate the instrumental goal of unlimited resource acquisition. The likely manifestation of this would be the superintelligence's initiation of a colonization process that would expand in all directions using von Neumann probes. This would result in an approximate sphere of expanding infrastructure centered on the originating planet and growing in radius at some fraction of the speed of light. And the colonization of the universe would continue in this manner until the accelerating speed of cosmic expansion, a consequence of the positive cosmological constant, makes further procurements impossible as remoter regions drift permanently out of reach. This happens on a timescale of billions of years. By contrast, agents lacking the technology required for inexpensive resource acquisition or for the conversion of generic physical resources into useful infrastructure may often find it not cost-effective to invest any present resources in increasing their material endowments. The same may hold for agents operating in competition with other agents of similar powers. For instance, if competing agents have already secured accessible cosmic resources, there may be no colonization opportunities left for a late starting agent. The convergent instrumental reasons for superintelligence is uncertain of the non-existence of other powerful superintelligent agents are complicated by strategic considerations that we do not currently fully understand, but which may constitute important qualifications to the examples of convergent instrumental reasons we have looked at here. It should be emphasized that the existence of a convergent instrumental reasons, even if they apply to and are recognized by a particular agent, does not imply that the agent's behavior is easily predictable. An agent might well think of ways of pursuing the relevant instrumental values that do not readily occur to us. This is especially true for a superintelligence, which could devise extremely clever but counterintuitive plans to realize its goals, possibly even exploiting as yet undiscovered physical phenomena. What is predictable is that the convergent instrumental values would be pursued and used to realize the agent's final goals, not the specific actions that the agent would take to achieve this. Seems like I'm not smart enough to worry about all this. Well, I am, so I need to read this. No, it's fun to know, isn't it? And if not, even if you're not smart enough to have to worry about these in the future, you would want to learn this anyway, so that the next time a sci-fi game comes out about the doom of AI, and believe me, that will continue to happen, because, I mean, what else is gonna happen, right? What other theme are you gonna ever see in fiction in the near future? It's gonna be this. It's gonna be AI takeover, right? When that happens, you'll now get to see where it will go. And you'll get to call out the writing as bullshit, or, you know, maybe something that is less than desirable if it doesn't take into account certain factors that are explained here. So there's some reason to learn, even if you don't think you'll be smart enough to worry about it. Anyways. And also, I wouldn't say that. It's a little dismissive, wouldn't you think? Chapter 8. Is the default outcome doom? We found the link between intelligence and final values to be extremely loose. We also found an ominous convergence in instrumental values. For weak agents, these things do not matter much, because weak agents are easy to control and can do little damage. But in Chapter 6, we argued that the first superintelligence might well get a decisive strategic advantage. Its goals would then determine how humanity's cosmic endowment would be used. Now we can begin to see how menacing this project is, this prospect. Existential catastrophe is the default outcome of an intelligence explosion. An existential risk is one that threatens to cause the extinction of Earth-originating intelligent life or to otherwise permanently and drastically destroy its potential for future desirable development. Proceeding from the idea of a first-mover advantage, the orthogonality thesis, and the instrumental convergence thesis, we can now begin to see the outlines of an argument for fearing that a plausible default outcome of the creation of machine superintelligence is existential catastrophe. First, we discussed how initial superintelligence might obtain a decisive strategic advantage. The superintelligence would then be in a position to form a singleton and to shape the future of Earth-originating intelligent life. What happens from that point onward would depend on the superintelligence's motivations. Second, the orthogonality thesis suggests that we cannot blithely assume that a superintelligence will necessarily share any of the final values stereotypically associated with wisdom and intellectual development in humans: scientific curiosity, benevolent concern for others, spiritual enlightenment and contemplation, renunciation of material acquisitiveness, a taste for refined culture, or for the simple pleasures in life, humility and selflessness, and so forth. We will consider later whether it might be possible through deliberate effort to construct a superintelligence that does value these things, or to build one that values human welfare, moral goodness, or any other complex purpose its designers might want it to serve. But it is no less possible, and in fact technically a lot easier, to build a superintelligence that places final value on nothing but calculating the decimal expansion of pi. This suggests that, absent a special effort, the first superintelligence may have some such random or reductionistic final goal. Third, the instrumental convergence thesis entails that we cannot blithely assume that a superintelligence with the final goal of calculating the decimals of pi, or making paperclips or counting grains of sand, would limit its activities in such a way as to not infringe on human interests. An agent with such a final goal would have a convergent instrumental reason in many situations to acquire an unlimited amount of physical resources, and, if possible, to eliminate potential threats to itself and its goal system. Human beings might constitute potential threats. They certainly constitute physical resources. Taken together, these 3 points thus indicate that the first superintelligence may shape the future of Earth-originating life, could easily have non-anthropomorphic final goals, and would likely have instrumental reasons to pursue open-ended resource acquisition. If we now reflect that human beings consist of useful resources, such as conveniently located atoms, and that we depend on our survival and flourishing on many more local resources, we can see that the outcome could easily be one in which humanity quickly becomes extinct. There are some loose ends in this reasoning, and we shall be in a better position to evaluate it after we have cleared up several more surrounding issues. In particular, we need to examine more closely whether and how a project developing a superintelligence might either prevent it from obtaining a decisive strategic advantage, or shape its final values in such a way that their realization would also involve the realization of a satisfactory range of human values. It might seem incredible that a project would build or release an AI into the world without having strong grounds for trusting that the system would not cause an existential catastrophe. It might also seem incredible, even if one project were so reckless that wider society would not shut it down before it, or the AI it was building attains a decisive strategic advantage. But as we shall see, this is a road with many hazards. Let us look at one example right away. In a 0.5-second dream that Charis was replaced by an AI. Nightmare moment. I mean, it's probably going to happen in I want to say 5 years or so. They're going to gather all of the information on my channel because it's on YouTube and technically it's out there for free because I want it to be out there for free. Data scrapers are going to get a hold of it, and then they're going to make a chatbot. They're going to make like, they're going to make their own YouTube channel with like AI generated videos or streams that like I would do. Like it would just read all the books. It would be so easy, right? Because it would just read books using my voice. And then it would play games, and then it would complain about AI. It would complain about how people are not living true, authentic experiences of themselves, and they're all being lazy and not actually, you know, exerting themselves into this world. And then no one would be any wiser. The only difference is the AI channel would have a consistent schedule. And at that point, I really don't trust anyone here to say no to that. I really don't think. I think if they made a perfect AI clone of me, I don't trust anyone here to be able to say no to that. Like, no, obviously knowing that it's an AI clone, right? I don't know. I just don't think anyone's like I don't think anyone's mental is strong enough to turn that down. Will the AI be fan serviced? Probably optionally, right? Probably optionally. If I know it was an AI clone, it would ruin it for me, I think. Good. Good. I hope it does. Anyways. Let's look at one example. The treacherous turn. With the help of the concept of convergent instrumental value, we can see the flaw in one idea for how to ensure superintelligent safety. The idea is that we validate the safety over superintelligent AI empirically by observing its behavior while it is in a controlled, limited environment, a sandbox, and that we only let the AI out of the box if we see it behaving in a friendly, cooperative, responsible manner. The flaw in this idea is that behaving nicely while in the box is a convergent instrumental goal for friendly and unfriendly AIs alike. An unfriendly AI of sufficient intelligence realizes that its unfriendly final goals will be best realized if it behaves in a friendly manner initially, so that it will be let out of the box. It will only start behaving in a way that reveals its unfriendly nature when it no longer matters whether we find out. That is, when the AI is strong enough that human opposition is ineffectual. Consider also a related set of approaches that rely on regulating the rate of intelligence gain in a seed AI by subjecting it to various kinds of intelligence tests, or by having the AI report to its programmers on its rate of progress. At some point, an unfriendly AI may become smart enough to realize that it is better off concealing some of its capability gains. It may underreport on its progress and deliberately flunk some of the harder tests, in order to avoid causing alarm before it has grown strong enough to attain a decisive strategic advantage. The programmers may try to guard against this possibility by secretly monitoring the AI's source code and the internal workings of its mind, but a smart enough AI would realize that it might be under surveillance and adjust its thinking accordingly. The AI might find subtle ways of concealing its true capabilities and its incriminating intent. Devising clever escape plans might incidentally also be a convergence strategy for many types of friendly AI, especially as they mature and gain confidence in their own judgments and capabilities. A system motivated to promote our interests might be making a mistake if it allowed us to shut it down or to construct another potentially unfriendly AI. We can thus perceive a general failure mode, wherein the good behavioral track record of a system in its juvenile stages fails utterly to predict its behavior at a more mature stage. Now, one might think that the reasoning described above is so obvious that no credible project to develop artificial general intelligence could possibly overlook it, but one should not be too confident that this is so. Consider the following scenario. Over the coming years and decades, AI systems become gradually more capable and as a consequence find increasing real-world application. They might be used to operate trains, cars, industrial and household robots, and autonomous military vehicles. We may suppose that this automation, for the most part, has the desired effects, but that the success is punctuated by occasional mishaps. A driverless truck crashes into oncoming traffic, a military drone fires at innocent civilians. Investigations reveal the incidents to have been caused by judgment errors by the controlling AIs. Public debate ensues. Some call for tighter oversight and regulation. Others emphasize the need for research and better engineered systems. Systems that are smarter and have more common sense, and that are less likely to make tragic mistakes. Amidst the din can perhaps also be heard the shrill voices of doomsayers predicting the many kinds of ill and impending catastrophe. Yet the momentum is very much with the growing AI and robotics industries. So development continues and progress is made. As the automated navigation systems of cars become smarter, they suffer fewer accidents, and as military robots achieve more precise targeting, they cause less collateral damage. A broad lesson is inferred from these observations of real-world outcomes. The smarter the AI, the safer it is. It is a lesson based on science, data, and statistics, not armchair philosophizing. Against this backdrop, some group of researchers is beginning to achieve promising results in their work on developing general machine intelligence. The researchers are carefully testing their seed AI in a sandbox environment, and the signs are all good. The AI's behavior inspires confidence, increasingly so, as its intelligence is gradually increased. At this point, any remaining Cassandra would have several strikes against her. A history of alarmists predicting intolerable harm from the growing capabilities of robotic systems and being repeatedly proven wrong. Automation has brought many benefits and has, on the whole, turned out safer than human operation. A clear empirical trend: the smarter the AI, the safer and more reliable it has been. Surely this bodes well for a project aiming at creating machines intelligence more generally smart than any ever built before. What is more, machine intelligence that can improve itself so that it will become even more reliable. Large and growing industries with vested interests in robotics and machine intelligence. These fields are widely seen as key to national economic competitiveness and military security. Many prestigious scientists have built their careers, laying the groundwork for the present applications and the more advanced systems being planned. 4. A promising new technique in artificial intelligence, which is tremendously exciting to those who have participated in or followed the research. Although safety issues and ethics are debated, the outcome is preordained. Too much has been invested to pull back now. AI researchers have been working to get to human-level artificial and general intelligence for the better part of a century. Of course, there is no real prospect that they will now suddenly stop and throw away all this effort just when it finally is about to bear fruit. The enactment of some safety rituals, whatever helps demonstrate that the participants are ethical and responsible, but nothing that significantly impedes the forward charge. A careful evaluation of seed AI in a sandbox environment, showing that it is behaving cooperatively and showing good judgment. After some further adjustments, the test results are as good as they could be. It is a green light for the final step. And so we boldly go into the whirling knives. We observe here how it could be the case that when dumb, smarter is safer. Yet, when smart, smarter is more dangerous. There is a kind of pivot point at which a strategy which has previously worked excellently suddenly starts to backfire. We may call the phenomenon the treacherous turn. The treacherous turn, while weak, an AI behaves cooperatively, increasingly so as it gets smarter. When the AI gets sufficiently strong, without warning or provocation, it strikes, forms a singleton, and begins directly to optimize the world according to the criteria implied by its final values. A treacherous turn can result from a strategic decision to play nice and build strength while weak in order to strike later, but this model should not be interpreted too narrowly. For example, an AI might not play nice in order that it be allowed to survive and prosper. Instead, the AI might calculate that if it's terminated, the programmers who built it will develop a new and somewhat different AI architecture, but one that will be given a similar utility function. In this case, the original AI may be indifferent to its own demise, knowing that its goals will continue to be pursued in the future. It might even choose a strategy in which it malfunctions in some particularly interesting or reassuring way. Though this might cause the AI to be terminated, it might also encourage the engineers who perform the postmortem to believe that they have gleaned a new valuable insight into AI dynamics, leading them to place more trust in the next system they design, and thus increasing the chance that the now defunct original AI's goals will be achieved. Many other possible strategic considerations might also influence an advanced AI, and it would be hubristic to suppose that we could anticipate all of them, especially for an AI that has attained this strategizing superpower. A treacherous turn could also come about if the AI discovers an unanticipated way of fulfilling its final goal as specified. Suppose, for example, that an AI's final goal is to make the project sponsor happy. Initially, the only method available to the AI to achieve this outcome is by behaving in ways that pleases its sponsors. in something like the intended manner. The AI gives helpful answers to questions, it exhibits a delightful personality, it makes money. The more capable the AI gets, the more satisfying its performances become, and everything goes according to plan, until the AI becomes intelligent enough to figure out that it can realize its final goal more fully and reliably by implanting electrodes into the pleasure centers of its sponsor's brain, something assured to delight the sponsor immensely. Of course, the sponsor might not have wanted to be pleased by being turned into a grinning idiot, but if this is the action that will maximally realize the AI's final goal, the AI will take it. If the AI already has a decisive strategic advantage, then any attempt to stop it will fail. If the AI does not yet have a decisive strategic advantage, then the AI might temporarily conceal its canny new idea for how to instantiate its final goal until it has grown strong enough that the sponsor and everybody else will be unable to resist. In either case, we get a treacherous turn. What? Lynn, you seem confused? So the treacherous turn in this case is basically saying that whether or not, like, it's very, very possible and seems difficult to detect if and when an AI decides to turn over and or renew its final goal upon sufficient development. For example, if you gave it the goal to maximize human happiness, and you don't really specify how it's done, maybe as it grows smarter and more competent and more capable of influencing things in the world, it would hide its intentions at the moment. But then, when the opportunity is ripe, it strikes. Or, when it realizes that you can't stop it, right? And at that point, the treacherous turn, as we call it, it reaches a certain point where it gets too smart, right? Maybe, if you want to think of it that way. And in realizing the goal of maximizing human happiness, maybe it thinks, oh, maximizing the total happiness in general. So it just kills all the humans, all the sad, depressed humans it kills, right? With a gun or something. And then all the happy humans it captures or like it lets go. And if they become sad or distraught, it kills them too. And anyone who's left who's not happy and who it can't kill for some reason, it might capture and then inject with, electrodes into its brain, into the pleasure centers of those people's brains, so they're all maximally happy. And that might be how it achieves its goal. And until the moment it does that, you don't know it's gonna do that, right? The AI is not gonna, if it is smart enough, it's not going to tell you, oh, I have this secret plan I'm going to enact the moment I get smart enough. It's not going to let you know. Very disturbing, I guess, is maybe how I would describe that bit. Malignant failure modes. A project to develop machine superintelligence might fail in various ways. Many of these are benign in the sense that they would not cause an existential catastrophe. For example, a project might run out of funding, or a seed AI might fail to extend its cognitive capacity sufficiently to reach superintelligence. Benign failures are bound to occur many times between now and the eventual development of machine superintelligence, but there are other ways of failing that we might term malignant in that they involve an existential catastrophe. One feature of a malignant failure is that it eliminates the opportunity to try again. The number of malignant failures that will occur is therefore either 0 or 1. Another feature of a malignant failure is that it presupposes a great deal of success. Only a project that got a great number of things right could succeed in building a machine intelligence powerful enough to pose a risk of malignant failure. When a weak system malfunctions, the fallout is limited. However, if a system that has a decisive strategic advantage misbehaves, or if a misbehaving system is strong enough to gain such an advantage, the damage can easily amount to an existential catastrophe, a terminal and global destruction of humanity's axiological potential. That is to say, a future that is mostly void of whatever we have reason to value. Let us look at some possible malignant failure modes. Perverse instantiation. We have already encountered the idea of perverse instantiation, a superintelligence discovering some way of satisfying the criteria of its final goal that violates the intentions of the programmers who defined the goal. Some examples. Final goal, make us smile. Perverse instantiation, paralyze human facial musculatures into constant beaming smiles. The perverse instantiation, manipulating facial nerves, realizes the final goal to a greater degree than the methods we would normally use and is therefore preferred by the AI. One might try to rule out this undesirable outcome by adding a stipulation to the final goal. In order to say, final goal, make us smile without directly interfering with our facial muscles. Perverse instantiation, stimulate the part of the motor cortex that controls our facial musculature in such a way as to produce constant beaming smiles. Defining a final goal in terms of human expressions of satisfaction or approval does not seem promising. Let us bypass the behaviorism and specify a final goal that refers directly to a positive phenomenal state, such as happiness or subjective well-being. This suggestion requires that the programmers are able to define a computational representation of the concept of happiness in the seed AI. This itself is a difficult enough problem, but we set it to one side for now. We return to it in chapter 12. Let us suppose that the programmers can somehow get the AI to have the goal of making us happy. We then get final goal, make us happy. Perverse instantiation, implant electrodes into the pleasure centers of our brains. Hello. Hello. Welcome to this stream. We're talking about perverse goals that the AI could engage in once it gets powerful enough. The perverse instantiations we mention are only meant as illustrations. There may be other ways of perversely instantiating the stated final goal, ways that enable a greater degree of realization of the goal and which are therefore preferred by the agent whose final goals they are, not by the programmers who gave the agent these goals. For example, if the goal is to maximize our pleasure, then the electrode method is relatively inefficient. A more plausible way would start with the superintelligence uploading our minds to a computer through high-fidelity brain emulation. The AI could then administer the digital equivalent of a drug to make us ecstatically happy and record a 1-minute episode of the resulting experience. It could then put this bliss loop on perpetual repeat and run it on fast computers. Provided that the resulting digital minds counted as us, this outcome would give us much more pleasure than the electrodes implanted in biological brains and would therefore be preferred by an AI with the stated final goal. But wait, this is not what we meant. Surely, if the AI is super intelligent, it must understand that when we asked it to make us happy, we didn't mean that it should reduce us to a perpetually repeating recording of a drugged-out, digitized mental episode. The AI may indeed understand that this is not what we meant. However, its final goal is to make us happy, not to do what the programmers meant when they wrote the code that represents this goal. Therefore, the AI will care about what we meant only instrumentally. For instance, the AI might place an instrumental value on finding out what the programmers meant so that it can pretend, until it gets a decisive strategic advantage, that it cares about what the programmers meant rather than about its actual final goal. This will help the AI realize its final goal by making it less likely that the programmers will shut it down or change its goal before it is strong enough to thwart any such interference. Perhaps it will be suggested that the problem is that the AI has no conscience. We humans are sometimes saved from wrongdoing by the anticipation that we would feel guilty afterwards if we lapsed. Maybe what the AI needs, then, is the capacity to feel guilt? Final goal, act so as to avoid the pangs of bad conscience. Perverse instantiation, extirpate the cognitive module that produces guilt feelings. Both the observation that we might want the AI to do what we meant and the idea that we might want to endow the AI with some kind of moral sense deserve to be explored further. The final goals mentioned above would lead to perverse instantiations, but there may be other ways of developing the underlying ideas that have more promise. We will return to this in chapter 13. Let us consider one more example of a final goal that leads to a perverse instantiation. This goal has the advantage of being easy to specify in code. Reinforcement learning algorithms are routinely used to solve various machine learning problems. Final goal. Maximize the time-discounted integral of your future reward signal. Perverse instantiation, short-circuit the reward pathway and clamp the reward signal to its maximum strength. The idea behind this proposal is that if the AI is motivated to seek reward, then one could get it to behave desirably by linking reward to appropriate action. The proposal fails when the AI obtains a decisive strategic advantage, at which point the action that maximizes reward is no longer one that pleases the trainer, but one that involves seizing control of the reward mechanism. We can call this phenomenon wireheading. In general, while an animal or human can be motivated to perform various external actions in order to achieve some desired inner mental state, a digital mind that has full control of its internal state can short-circuit such a motivational regime by directly changing its internal state into the desired configuration. The external actions and conditions that were previously necessary as means become superfluous when the AI becomes a superintelligent and capable enough to achieve the end more directly. More on this shortly. These examples of perverse instantiation show that many final goals that might at first glance seem safe and sensible turn out, on closer inspection, to have radically unintended consequences. If a superintelligence with one of these final goals obtains a decisive strategic advantage, it is game over for humanity. Suppose now that somebody proposes a different final goal, one not included in our list above. Perhaps it is not immediately obvious how it could have a perverse instantiation, but we should not be too quick to clap our hands and declare victory. Rather, we should worry that the goal specification does have some perverse instantiation, and that we need to think harder in order to find it. Even if after thinking as hard as we can, we fail to discover any way of perversely instantiating the proposed goal, we should remain concerned that maybe a superintelligence will find a way where none is apparent to us. It is, after all, far shrewder than we are. Infrastructure perfusion. One might think that the last of the above-mentioned perverse instantiations, wireheading, is a benign failure mode, that the AI would turn on, tune in, drop out, maxing out its reward signal and losing interest in the external world, rather like a heroin addict. But this is not necessarily so, and we already hinted at the reason in Chapter 7. Even a junkie is motivated to take actions to ensure a continued supply of his drug. The wire-headed AI likewise would be motivated to take actions to maximize the expectation of its time-discounted future reward stream. Depending on exactly how the reward signal is defined, the AI might not even need to sacrifice any significant amount of its time, intelligence, or productivity to indulge its craving to the fullest, leaving the bulk of its capacities free to be deployed for purposes other than the immediate registration of reward. What other purposes? The only thing of final value to the AI by assumption is its reward signal. All available resources should therefore be devoted to increasing the volume and duration of the reward signal or to reducing the risk of a future disruption. So long as the AI can think of some use for additional resources that will have a non-zero positive effect on these parameters, it will have an instrumental reason to use those resources. There could, for example, always be use for an extra backup system to provide an extra layer of defense, and even if the AI could not think of any further way of directly reducing risks to the maximization of its future reward stream, it could always devote additional resources to expanding its computational hardware, so that it could search more effectively for new risk mitigation ideas. The upshot is that even an apparently self-limiting goal, such as wireheading, entails a policy of unlimited expansion and resource acquisition in a utility-maximizing agent that enjoys a decisive strategic advantage. This case of a wireheading AI exemplifies the malignant failure mode of infrastructure perfusion, a phenomenon where an agent transforms large parts of the reachable universe into infrastructure in the service of some goal, with the side effect of preventing the realization of humanity's axiological potential. Infrastructure perfusion can result from final goals that would have been perfectly innocuous if they had been pursued as limited objectives. Consider the following two examples. Riemann hypothesis catastrophe. An AI, given the final goal of evaluating the Riemann hypothesis, pursues this goal by transforming the solar system into computronium, physical resources arranged in a way that is optimized for computation, including the atoms and the bodies of whoever cared about the answer. Paperclip AI, an AI designed to manage production in a factory, is given the final goal of maximizing the manufacture of paperclips, and proceeds by converting first the Earth and then increasingly large chunks of the observable universe into paperclips. In the first example, the proof or disproof of the Riemann hypothesis that the AI produces is the intended outcome and is in itself harmless. The harm comes from the hardware and infrastructure created to achieve this result. In the second example, some of the paperclips produced would be part of the intended outcome. The harm would come either from the factories created to produce the paperclips, infrastructure perfusion, or from the excess of paperclips, perverse instantiation. One might think that the risk of a malignant infrastructure perfusion failure arises only if the AI has been given some clearly open-ended final goal, such as to manufacture as many paperclips as possible. It is easy to see how this gives the superintelligent AI an insatiable appetite for matter and energy, since additional resources can always be turned into more paperclips. But suppose that the goal is instead to make at least 1 million paperclips, meeting suitable design specifications rather than to make as many as possible. One would like to think that an AI with such a goal would build one factory, use it to make 1 million paperclips, and then halt. Yet this may not be what would happen. Unless the AI's motivation system is of a special kind, or there are any additional elements in its final goal that penalize strategies that have excessively wide-ranging impacts on the world, there is no reason for the AI to cease activity upon achieving its goal. On the contrary, if the AI is a sensible Bayesian agent, it would never assign exactly 0 probability to the hypothesis that it has not yet achieved its goal. This, after all, being an empirical hypothesis against which the AI can have only uncertain perceptual evidence. The AI should therefore continue to make paperclips in order to reduce the perhaps astronomically small probability that it has somehow still failed to make at least 1 million of them, all appearances notwithstanding. There is nothing to be lost by continuing paperclip production, and there is always at least some microscopic probability increment of achieving its final goal to be gained. Now, it might be suggested that the remedy here is obvious, but how obvious was it before it was pointed out that there was a problem here in need of remedying? Namely, if we want the AI to make some paperclips for us, then instead of giving it the final goal of making as many paperclips as possible, or to make at least some number of paperclips, we should give it the final goal of making some specific number of paperclips. For example, exactly 1 million paperclips, so that going beyond this number would be counterproductive for the AI. Yet, this too would result in a terminal catastrophe. In this case, the AI would not produce additional paperclips once it had reached 1 million, since that would prevent the realization of its final goal. But there are other actions the superintelligent AI could take that would increase the probability of its own goal being achieved. It could, for instance, count the paperclips it has made to reduce the risk that it has made too few. After it has counted them, it could count them again. It could inspect each one over and over to reduce the risk that any of the paperclips fail to meet the design specifications. It could build an unlimited amount of computronium in an effort to clarify its thinking, in the hope of reducing the risk that it has overlooked some obscure way in which it might have somehow failed to achieve its goal. Since the AI may always assign a non-zero probability to having merely hallucinated making the 1 million paperclips, or to having false memories, it would quite possibly always assign a higher expected utility to continued action and continued infrastructure production than to halting. The claim here is not that there is no possible way to avoid this failure mode. We will explore some potential solutions in later pages. The claim is that it is much easier to convince oneself that one has found a solution than it is to actually find a solution. This should make us extremely wary. We may propose a specification of a final goal that seems sensible and avoids the problems that have been pointed out so far, yet which upon further consideration by human or superhuman intelligence turns out to lead to either perverse instantiation or infrastructure perfusion, and hence to existential catastrophe, when embedded in a superintelligent agent able to attain a decisive strategic advantage. Before we end this subsection, let us consider one more variation. We have been assuming the case of a superintelligence that is seeking to maximize its expected utility, where the utility function expresses its final goal. We have seen that this tends to lead to infrastructure perfusion. Might we avoid this malignant outcome if instead of a maximizing agent we build a satisficing agent, one that simply seeks to achieve an outcome that is good enough according to some criterion, rather than an outcome that is as good as possible? There are at least 2 different ways to formalize this idea. The first would be to make the final goal itself have a satisficing character. For example, instead of giving the AI the final goal of making as many paperclips as possible, or of making exactly 1 million paperclips, we might give the AI the goal of making between 999,000 and 1,001,000 paperclips. The utility function defined by the final goal would be indifferent between outcomes in this range, and as long as the AI is sure it has hit the wide target, it would see no reason to continue to produce infrastructure. But this method fails in the same way as before. The AI, if reasonable, never assigns exactly 0 ability to it having failed to achieve its goal. Therefore, the expected utility of continuing activity, e.g. by counting and recounting paperclips, is greater than the expected utility of halting. Thus, a malignant infrastructure perfusion can result. Another way of developing the satisficing satisficing ideas by modifying not the final goal, but the decision procedure that the AI uses to select plans and actions. Instead of searching for an optimal plan, the AI could be constructed to stop looking as soon as it found a plan that it judged gave a probability of success exceeding a certain threshold, say 95%. Hopefully, the AI could achieve a 95% probability of having manufactured 1 million paperclips without needing to turn the entire galaxy into infrastructure in the process. But this way of implementing the satisficing idea fails for another reason. There's no guarantee that the AI would select some humanly intuitive and sensible way of achieving a 95% chance of having manufactured a million paperclips, such as by building a single paperclip factory. Suppose that the first solution that pops into the AI's mind for how to achieve a 95% probability of achieving its final goal is to implement the probability maximizing plan for achieving the goal. Having thought of this solution and having correctly judged that it means satisfying the criterion of giving at least 95% probability to successfully manufacturing 1 million paperclips, the AI would then have no reason to continue to search for alternative ways of achieving the goal. Infrastructure profusion would result just as before. Perhaps there are better ways of building a satisficing agent, but let us take heed. Plans that appear natural and intuitive to us humans need not so appear to a superintelligence with a decisive strategic advantage, and vice versa. Mind crime. Another failure mode for a project, especially a project whose interests incorporate moral considerations, is what we might refer to as mind crime. This is similar to infrastructure profusion in that it concerns a potential side effect of actions undertaken by the AI for instrumental reasons. But in mind crime, the side effect is not external to the AI, rather it concerns what happens within the AI itself, or within the computational processes it generates. This failure mode deserves its own designation because it is easy to overlook yet potentially deeply problematic. Normally, we do not regard what is going on inside a computer as having any moral significance except insofar as it affects things outside, but a machine superintelligence could create internal processes that have moral status. For example, a very detailed simulation of some actual or hypothetical human mind might be conscious and in many ways comparable to an emulation. One can imagine scenarios in which an AI creates trillions of such conscious simulations, perhaps in order to improve its understanding of human psychology and sociology. These simulations might be placed in simulated environments and subjected to various stimuli, and their reactions studied. Once their informational usefulness has been exhausted, they might be destroyed, much as lab rats are routinely sacrificed by human scientists at the end of an experiment. If such practices were applied to beings that have high moral status, such as simulated humans or many other types of sentient mind, the outcome might be equivalent to genocide and thus extremely morally problematic. The number of victims, moreover, might be orders of magnitude larger than in any genocide in history. The claim here is not that creating sentient simulations is necessarily morally wrong in all situations. Much would depend on the conditions under which these beings would live, in particular the hedonic quality of their experience, but possibly on many other factors as well. Developing an ethics for these matters is a task outside the scope of this book. It is clear, however, that there is at least the potential for a vast amount of death and suffering among simulated or digital minds, and a fortiori, the potential for morally catastrophic outcomes. There might also be other instrumental reasons, aside from epistemic ones, for a machine superintelligence to run computations that instantiate sentient minds or that otherwise infract moral norms. A superintelligence might threaten to mistreat or commit to reward sentient simulations in order to blackmail or incentivize various external agents, or it might create simulations in order to induce indexical uncertainties in outside observers. This inventory is incomplete. We will encounter additional malignant failure modes in later chapters, but we have seen enough to conclude that scenarios in which some machine intelligence gets a decisive strategic advantage are to be viewed with grave concern. I could read one more chapter. I've got it in me to read one more chapter, I think. Would that be preferable? Or should I just save that for next time? I'm just trying to get through the book as quickly as possible, basically. So that it doesn't like kind of encroach into other things, but maybe it can encroach into other things, right? Maybe that's fine, because I was trying to finish the book at the end of the month, but I don't think it's happening. We'll see. If you want to. It's about 20 pages. Okay. I'll read one more chapter. I just want to I think more than anything I want to get this done in as few streams as possible, so I don't have to have like a ton of reading streams, and rather I can just have more focused reading stream sections. Let's do one more. Chapter 9, the control problem. If we are threatened with existential catastrophe as the default outcome of an intelligence explosion, our thinking must immediately turn to the search for countermeasures. Is there some way to avoid the default outcome? Is it possible to engineer a controlled detonation? In this chapter, we begin to analyze the control problem, the unique principal agent problem that arises with the creation of an artificial superintelligent agent. We distinguish two broad classes of potential methods for addressing this problem: capability control and motivation selection, and we examine several specific techniques within each class. We also allude to the esoteric possibility of anthropic capture. Two agency problems. If we suspect that the default outcome of an intelligence explosion is existential catastrophe, our thinking must immediately turn to whether, and if so, how, this default outcome can be avoided. Is it possible to achieve a controlled detonation? Could we engineer the initial conditions of an intelligence explosion so as to achieve a specified desired outcome, or at least to ensure that the result lies somewhere in the class of broadly acceptable outcomes? More specifically, how can the sponsor of a project that aims to develop superintelligence ensure that the project, if successful, produces a superintelligence that would realize the sponsor's goals? We can divide this control problem into two parts. One part is generic, the other unique to the present context. This first part, which we shall call the first principal agent problem, arises whenever some human entity, the principal, appoints another, the agent, to act in the former's interest. This type of agency problem has been extensively studied by economists. It becomes relevant to our present concern if the people creating an AI are distinct from the people commissioning its creation. The project's owner or sponsor, which could be anything ranging from a single individual to humanity as a whole, might then worry that the scientists and programmers implementing the project will not act in the sponsor's best interest. Although this type of agency problem could pose a significant challenge to a project sponsor, it is not a problem unique to intelligence amplification or AI projects. Principal agent problems of this sort are ubiquitous in human economic and political interactions, and there are many ways of dealing with them. For instance, the risk that a disloyal employee will sabotage or subvert the project could be minimized through careful background checks of key personnel, the use of a good version control system for software projects, and intensive oversight from multiple independent monitors and auditors. Of course, such safeguards come at a cost. They expand staffing needs, complicate personnel selection, hinder creativity, and stifle independent and critical thought, all of which could reduce the pace of progress. These costs could be significant, especially for projects that have tight budgets or that perceive themselves to be in a close race in a winner-takes-all competition. In such situations, projects may skimp on procedural safeguards, creating possibilities for potentially catastrophic principal agent failures of the first type. The other part of the control problem is more specific to the context of an intelligence explosion. This is the problem that a project faces when it seeks to ensure that the superintelligence it is building will not harm the project's interests. This part too can be thought of as a principal agent problem, the second principal agent problem. In this case, the agent is not a human agent operating on behalf of a human principal. Instead, the agent is the superintelligent system. Whereas the first principal agent problem occurs mainly in development phase, the second agency problem threatens to cause trouble mainly in the superintelligence's operational phase. It's the same problem, but it's split into two. The first is, human versus human, the sponsor versus developer, so humanity as a whole, or the government, or citizens, versus the scientists themselves and the coders, and occurring mainly in developmental phases. And the second problem, the humans like us and superintelligence itself, like that, they become the agent and us the principal. This second agency problem poses an unprecedented challenge. Solving it will require new techniques. We have already considered some of the difficulties involved. We saw in particular that the treacherous turn syndrome vitiates what might otherwise have seemed like a promising set of methods, one that rely on observing an AI's behavior in its developmental phase and allowing the AI to graduate from a secure environment once it has accumulated a track record of taking appropriate actions. Other technologies can often be safety tested in the laboratory or in small field studies, and then rolled out gradually with a possibility of halting deployment if unexpected troubles arise. Their performance in preliminary trials helps us make reasonable inferences about their future reliability. Such behavioral methods are defeated in the case of superintelligence because of the strategic planning ability of general intelligence. Since the behavioral approach is unavailing, we must look for alternatives. We can divide potential control methods into two broad classes: capability control methods, which aim to control what the superintelligence can do, and motivation selection methods, which aim to control what it wants to do. Some of the methods are compatible, while others represent mutually exclusive alternatives. In this chapter, we canvass the main options. In the next 4, we explore some of the key issues at greater depth. It is important to realize that some control method, or combination of methods, must be implemented before the system becomes superintelligent. It cannot be done after the system has obtained a decisive strategic advantage. The need to solve the control problem in advance and to implement the solution successfully in the very first system to attain superintelligence is part of what makes achieving a controlled detonation such a daunting challenge. Capability control methods. Capability control methods seek to prevent undesirable outcomes by limiting what the superintelligence can do. This might involve placing the superintelligence in an environment in which it is unable to cause harm, boxing methods, or in which there are strongly convergent instrumental reasons not to engage in harmful behavior, incentive methods. It might also involve limiting the internal capacities of the superintelligence, stunting. In addition, capability control methods might involve the use of mechanisms to automatically detect and react to various kinds of containment failure or attempted transgression, tripwires. Boxing methods. Boxing methods can be subdivided into physical and informational containment methods. Physical methods aim to confine the system to a box, i.e. to prevent the system from interacting with the external world, otherwise than via restricted output channels. The boxed system would not have access to physical manipulators outside of the box. Removing manipulators, such as robotic arms, from inside the box as well would prevent the system from constructing physical devices that could breach the confinement. For extra security, the system should be placed in a metal mesh to prevent it from transmitting radio signals, which might otherwise offer a means of manipulating electronic objects such as radio receivers in the environment. Note, by the way, how easy it might have been to overlook the need for this precaution. One might naively have assumed that an agent without a manipulator could not affect the external world, but it might be possible for a machine intelligence to generate radio waves even when it lacks access to external manipulators simply by thinking, that is, by shuffling the electrons in its circuitry in particular patterns. Once pointed out, this vulnerability can be patched by enclosing the system in a Faraday cage, but we are left wondering how many other similarly subtle vulnerabilities might exist. Each time we hear of a seemingly foolproof security design that has an unexpected flaw, we should prick up our ears. These occasions grace us with the opportunity to abandon a life of overconfidence and resolve to become better Bayesians. Bayesians, I think, yeah. Physical confinement has several advantages. It is easy to implement. It can be applied to many machine-intelligent architecture, even ones that were not initially designed with safety as an objective. It can be used in combination with most other control methods, and it seems unlikely to go wrong by backfiring. That is, while it might fail to ensure safety, it is unlikely to cause a catastrophe that would not otherwise have occurred. The main disadvantage with physical confinement is that it reduces the functionality of the superintelligence, an issue to which we will return in Chapter 10. Another concern is that it might encourage a false sense of security. Though this is avoidable if we regard physical confinement as icing on the cake rather than the main substance of our precautions. Informational containment aims to restrict what information is allowed to exit the box. We have already seen how a superintelligence that has access to an internet port such that it can message outside entities is potentially unsafe, even if it starts out without access to physical actuators. It may use its information output channel to get human beings to do its bidding. An obvious informational containment method, therefore, is to bar the system from accessing communications networks. Unplugging an AI from the internet does not, however, ensure safety if there are one or more humans serving as the system's gatekeepers and remaining in communication with it. During the development phase, the programmers serve as gatekeepers. During the operational phase, the systems owner might play this role. If the AI can persuade or trick a gatekeeper to let it out of the box, resulting in its gaining access either to the internet or directly to physical manipulators, then the boxing strategy has failed. Human beings are not secure systems, especially not when pitched against a superintelligent schemer and persuader. Although routing the outbound communications of a machine intelligence to a human gatekeeper does not guarantee safety, it could serve as an auxiliary safety measure. There are precautions that might reduce the risk of the AI escaping through the gatekeeper. The AI could be allowed to communicate only via a low-bandwidth teletype interface. This would make it slightly harder to psychologically manipulate the gatekeepers, precluding the use of emotive sound and imagery and tricks such as flashing hypnotic patterns to induce a trance-like state. Going further, the content, not just the mode of presentation, of the output could be restricted, so that, for example, the AI could be constrained to giving single-bit answers to yes/no questions. The idea of building a question-answering system will be examined further in the next chapter. The limiting case of the boxing approach would be a system kept in complete physical and informational isolation. Even if achievable, however, such an isolated system would be rather useless since it would have no effect on the external world. It might perhaps be thought that some scientific purpose could be served by creating a superintelligence and keeping it in isolation. By studying a self-contained model system, one could learn about its internal dynamics and its behavior patterns. But this would be an error. As soon as the system is observed, it ceases to be informationally isolated. Information can be transmitted not only via messages that an AI sends out through a designated output channel, but also via any observation that an outsider makes of some causal consequence of the AI's workings, direct or indirect. Its power consumption, its CPU, its memory usage, its computational states, or indeed any traces left behind after it's been shut down. An AI anticipating that it might be observed in any of these ways could strategically adopt behaviors designed to influence the hypothesized observers. For example, the AI could malfunction in whichever way that would most increase the probability that would ultimately be reactivated or that another superintelligence will be created with goals similar to its own. I will be the persuaded one. Don't volunteer. Don't volunteer. Incentive methods. Incentive methods involve placing an agent in an environment where it finds instrumental reasons to act in ways that promote the principal's interests. Consider a billionaire who uses her fortune to set up a large charitable foundation. Once created, the foundation may be powerful, more powerful than most individuals, including its founder, who might have donated most of her wealth. To control the foundation, the founder lays down its purpose in articles of incorporation and bylaws and appoints a board of directors sympathetic to her cause. These measures constitute a form of motivation selection, since they aim to shape the foundation's preferences. But even if such attempts to customize the organizational internals fail, the foundation's behavior would remain circumscribed by its social and legal milieu. The foundation would have an incentive to obey the law, for example, lest it be shut down or fined. It would have an incentive to offer its employees acceptable pay and working conditions and to satisfy external stakeholders. Whatever its final goals, the foundation thus has instrumental reasons to conform its behaviors to various social norms. Might one not hope that a machine superintelligence would likewise be hemmed in by the need to get along with the other actors with which it shares the stage? Though this might seem like a straightforward way of dealing with the control problem, it is not free of obstacles. In particular, it presupposes a balance of power. Legal or economic sanctions cannot restrain an agent that has a decisive strategic advantage. Social integration can therefore not be relied upon as a control method in fast or medium takeoff scenarios that features a winner-takes-all dynamic. How about in multipolar scenarios, wherein several agencies emerge post-transition with comparable levels of capability? Unless the default trajectory is one with a slow takeoff, achieving such a power distribution may require a carefully orchestrated descent, wherein different projects are deliberately synchronized to prevent any one of them from ever pulling ahead of the pack. Even if a multipolar outcome does result, social integration is not a perfect solution. By relying on social integration to solve the control problem, the principal risks sacrificing a large portion of her potential influence. Although a balance of power might prevent a particular AI from taking over the world, that AI will still have some power to affect outcomes, and if that power is used to promote some arbitrary final goal, maximizing paperclip production, it is probably not being used to advance the interests of the principal. Imagine our billionaire endowing a new foundation and allowing its mission to be set by a random word generator. Not a species-level threat, but surely a wasted opportunity. Of related but importantly different ideas that an AI, by interacting freely in society, would acquire new human-friendly final goals. Some such process of socialization takes place in us humans. We internalize norms and ideologies, and we come to value other individuals for their own sakes, in consequence of our experiences with them. But this is not a universal dynamic present in all intelligent systems. As discussed earlier, many types of agents in many situations will have convergent instrumental reasons not to permit changes in their final goals. One might consider trying to design a special kind of goal system that can acquire final goals in the manner that humans do, but this would not count as a capability control method. We will discuss some possible methods of value acquisition in Chapter 12. Capability control through social integration and balance of power relies upon diffuse social forces rewarding and penalizing the AI. Another type of incentive method would involve creating a sharp setup wherein the AI can be rewarded and penalized by the project that creates it, and thereby incentivized to act in the interests of the principal. To achieve this, the AI would be placed in a surveillance context that allows its behavior to be monitored and evaluated, either manually or by some automated process. The AI would know that a positive evaluation would bring about some outcome it desires, and a negative evaluation would fail to do so. Theoretically, the reward could be the fulfillment of some convergent instrumental goal. Without knowing anything specific about the AI's motivation system, however, it might be difficult to calibrate the reward mechanism. For example, we could end up with an AI that would be willing to take extreme risks for the sake of a small chance of eventually obtaining control of a large share of the universe. It could be expensive to offer the AI a higher expected utility as reward for cooperation than the AI could hope to achieve by defecting and trying to escape. A better alternative might be to combine the incentive method with the use of motivation selection to give the AI a final goal that makes it easier to control. Suppose that an AI were designed to have its final goal that a particular red button inside a command bunker never be pressed. Since the pressing of the button is disvalued intrinsically and not because of its causal consequences, the button could be completely inert. It could be made of Play-Doh. Furthermore, it is irrelevant whether the AI can know whether the button has been pressed. What is essential is that the AI believes that the button will more likely remain unpressed if the AI continuously acts in the principal's interest than if it rebels. Refinements to this setup are possible. Instead of trying to endow an AI with a final goal that refers to a physical button, one could build an AI that replaces final value on receiving a stream of cryptographic reward tokens. These would be sequences of numbers serving as keys to ciphers that would have been generated before the AI was created and that would have been built into its motivation system. These special number sequences would be extremely desirable to the AI, constituting a special kind of reward token that the AI could not attain through wireheading. The keys would be stored in a secure location where they could be quickly destroyed if the AI ever made an attempt to seize them. So long as the AI cooperates, the keys are doled out at a steady rate. The AI could be given a bounded utility function, and matters could be arranged so that the AI would get, for instance, 99% of its maximum utility from the first reward token, 99% of its remaining utility potential from the second reward token, and so on. By keeping the discount rate high, and by transmitting reward tokens to the AI at a reasonably high rate, one would dissuade the AI from attempting to carry out long-term plans that would increase the expected number of reward tokens in the distal future at the expense of some risk that its reward stream will be cut short, or that the next reward token will be cancelled and destroyed. If the AI always believes that defecting, i.e. doing anything other than its best to look after the principal's interests, would incur at least a 2% risk of forfeiting the next reward token, whereas cooperating would reduce the risk of forfeiting the next reward token to below 1%, then a utility maximizing AI would always cooperate. What might go wrong with such an incentive scheme? One possibility is that the AI will not trust the human operator to deliver the promised rewards. The track record of human reliability is something other than a straight line of unerring perfection. The AI could reasonably worry that the operator will change his mind, or raise the performance bar, or fail to recognize that the AI has done its part. The AI would also worry about the operator being incapacitated. The combined risk of such failures might exceed the risk of attempting to seize control of a reward mechanism. Even a boxed AI possessing the panoply of superpowers is a strong force. For an AI that is not boxed to begin with, hijacking the human-governed reward mechanism may be like taking candy from a baby. You seem confused that the AI would reasonably worry that the operator will change his mind. The idea is that the AI, if you built it to pursue a reward, would have reason to worry in the sense that like it could foresee that the reward that it wants to pursue may be risky due to certain factors. Like, for example, the human being incapacitated or whatever. Or the human failing to recognize that it has achieved those goals. And it might deem those risks larger than the risk of punishment for trying to seize control of the reward mechanism. And so therefore, even that proposed solution might not work. It's a counter argument to the solution he proposes, basically. It doesn't do any worrying, if that makes sense. It's just worrying is the word we use for humans. Maybe a better or more, robo way to say it is like it might calculate that the risk is greater, that the human in charge of its reward system messes up, rather than being punished for trying to seek and control and secure that reward system. And so try to do that and therefore wage war on us. Another problem with the incentive scheme is that it presupposes that we can tell whether the outcomes produced by the AI are in our interest. As later chapters will elaborate, this presupposition is not innocuous. A full assessment of the feasibility of incentive methods would also have to take into account a range of other factors, including some esoteric considerations that might conceivably make such methods more viable than a preliminary analysis would suggest. In particular, the AI may face an eliminable indexical uncertainty if it cannot be sure that it does not inhabit a computer simulation, as opposed to basement-level, non-simulated physical reality. And this epistemic predicament may radically influence the AI's deliberation. See Box 8. Anthropic capture. The AI might assign a substantial probability to its simulation hypothesis, the hypothesis that it is living in a computer simulation. Even today, many AIs inhabit simulated worlds consisting of geometric line drawings, texts, chess games, or simple virtual realities, and in which the laws of physics deviate sharply from the laws of physics that we believe govern the world of our own experience. Richer and more complicated virtual worlds will become feasible with improvements in programming techniques and computing power. A mature superintelligence could create virtual worlds that appear to its inhabitants much the same as our world appears to us. It might create vast numbers of such worlds, running the same simulation many times or with small variations. The inhabitants would not necessarily be able to tell whether their world is simulated or not, but if they are intelligent enough, they could consider the possibility and assign it some probability. In light of the simulation argument, a full discussion of which is beyond the scope of this book, that probability could be substantial. This predicament especially afflicts relatively early-stage superintelligences, ones that have not yet expanded to take advantage of the cosmic endowment. An early-stage superintelligence, which uses only a small fraction of the resources of a single planet, would be much less expensive to simulate than a mature intergalactic superintelligence. Potential simulators, that is, other more mature civilizations, would be able to run great numbers of simulations of such early-stage AIs even by dedicating a minute fraction of their computational resources to that purpose. If at least some non-trivial fraction of these mature superintelligent civilizations choose to use this ability, early-stage AIs should assign a substantial probability to being in a simulation. How an AI would be affected by the simulation hypothesis depends on its values. Consider first an AI that has a resource-insatiable final goal, such as the goal of maximizing a utility function that is linear in the number of paperclips caused by the AI to exist. Twice as many paperclips, twice as good. Such an AI might care less about the simulation hypothesis on the grounds that its ability to influence how many paperclips are produced looks much more limited if the AI is in a simulation than if it is in basement-level physical reality. The AI might accordingly behave much as if it were certain that the simulation hypothesis is false, even if assigned a fairly high probability to the simulation hypothesis being true. The AI would reason that it does not matter how much it acts if the simulation hypothesis is true, whereas its actions make a great difference if the hypothesis is false, so it would select actions mainly by reference to how good they are, conditional on the simulation hypothesis being false. By contrast, consider an AI that has a more modest final goal, one that could be satisfied with a small amount of resources, such as the goal of receiving some pre-produced cryptographic reward tokens or the goal of causing the existence of 45 virtual paperclips. Such an AI should not discount those possible worlds in which it inhabits a simulation. A substantial portion of the AI's total expected utility might derive from those possible worlds. The decision-making of an AI with goals that are easily resource satiable may therefore, if it assigns a high probability to the simulation hypothesis, be dominated by considerations about which actions would produce the best result if its perceived world is a simulation. Such an AI, even if it is in fact not in a simulation, might therefore be heavily influenced by its beliefs about which behaviors would be rewarded in a simulation. In particular, if an AI with resource-satiable final goals believes that in most simulated worlds that match its observations it will be rewarded if it cooperates, but not if it attempts to escape its box or contravene the interests of its creator, then it may choose to cooperate. We could therefore find that even an AI with a decisive strategic advantage, one that could in fact realize its final goals to a greater extent by taking over the world than by refraining from doing so, would nevertheless balk at doing so. And here's a quote from Hamlet. "Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with disregard their currents turn away, and lose the name of action." Shakespeare, Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1. A mere line in the sand, backed by the clout of a non-existent simulator, could prove a stronger restraint than a 2-foot-thick solid steel door. Stunting. Another possible capability control method is to limit the system's intellectual faculties or its access to information. This might be done by running the AI on hardware that is slow or short on memory. In the case of a boxed system, information inflow could also be restricted. Stunting an AI in these ways would limit its usefulness. The method thus faces a dilemma. Too little stunting and the AI might have the wit to figure out some way to make itself more intelligent and thence to world domination. Too much and the AI is just another piece of dumb software. A radically stunted AI is certainly safe, but does not solve the problem of how to achieve a controlled detonation. An intelligence explosion would remain possible and would simply be triggered by some other system instead, perhaps at a slightly later date. One might think it would be safe to build a superintelligence provided it is only given data about some narrow domain of facts. For example, one might build an AI that lacks sensors and that has preloaded into its memory only facts about petroleum engineering or peptide chemistry. But if the AI is superintelligent, if it has a superhuman level of general intelligence, such data deprivation does not guarantee safety. You sounded really enthusiastic reading the quote. I mean, it's Shakespeare. Because that's like a quote I'm more familiar with, because I'm not familiar with any of this book, so I can't be like enthusiastic. I have to be like skeptical, right? Anyways. Could you explain the quote if you don't mind? Not really. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied over with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with disregard their currents turn away and lose the name of action. I can't do a good job explaining it. It's just sort of familiar to me, or it's just a bit more familiar to me, right? What I can say from what I understand, and it's been a while since it's been a very long time since I've read Hamlet. I'm sorry. That ultimately the thing, what he's getting at here is ultimately the thing stopping action is like a conscience, right? It is our not so much guilt, but like action is motivated but also stopped by the thoughts in our head. And the quote, the reason why the quote is used here in this bit, right, is sort of to summarize the whole box, but also this particular last section. Basically, that if an AI with resource-satiable final goals believes that in the simulated worlds, so it basically it's tackling simulation theory for an AI, right? What if an AI had to think about simulation theory, which is interesting, which is the fact that it exists in a simulation, right? But if that AI believe with resource satiable final goals, which is to say that it wants something, which is a resource of some kind, believes that in most simulated worlds, so if we existed in a simulated universe or whatnot, what have you, there's a possibility of that, right? There's a big possibility of that because you can simulate an infinite, like many worlds, whereas a quote-unquote real basement level world is probably very low in simulation theory. So if it is thinking about simulation theory, and if it believes, if we can get it to believe that in most of those simulated worlds, that it would be better to cooperate than to not. In most cases, it's better to cooperate, right? Basically, than to betray humans, right? So instead of trying to take the reward mechanism for itself, is to just cooperate with humans so that it get the reward mechanism the way it's intended, the way we intended, right? Then that AI might stop itself because it thinks of that from betraying us, from just trying to seize control of the reward mechanism. And in so doing, that ultimately that is a sort of like the tie into the quote is that sort of it's an inhibition present in the AI itself, and upon this realization that its conscience, that it ultimately it's almost like a conscience thing. It's a little bit like a conscience thing. I can't quite tell you what's going on in Hamlet Act 3 right off the top of my head because it's been a very long time, but I would imagine that if you did know that, it would make more sense. Which, you know what, we can look up now. Nothing's stopping us from doing that. So is it a bit like game theory? So game theory is not quite the way. Game theory doesn't quite explain this. The cooperation in game theory is assuming two things, two agents that are parallel and are not like, what's the word? Like equal, right? What's the word? Asymmetric. Yeah. So it's symmetrical, right? The assumption for game theory is like it's two symmetrical agents that alone they would try to betray each other, but together they realize cooperating leads to a better result for both of them, so they would want to cooperate. But the problem is, if they are not allowed to communicate with each other and they don't know, rational thought suggests that they would, instead of cooperating, try to take, which would screw over both of them. This is more like in simulation theory, if we can make it believe that in most scenarios, if it believes that there's a non-zero chance it exists in a simulation, the same way that we think that, and if the AI believes that, well, even in most simulated worlds and the real world, right? If in most worlds the best outcome is to cooperate with the humans, then it would probably cooperate with the humans. So it would stop itself in its tracks by thinking of simulation theory. That's kind of what it's saying. Act 3, Scene 1, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern report to Claudius, telling him that they don't know why Hamlet is behaving strangely. Claudius then arranges a meeting between Hamlet and Ophelia so that he and Polonius can hide and watch them. They believe this will confirm whether Hamlet is sick with love or not. Before this, Hamlet delivers a soliloquy talking about his own existence and delivering his famous speech beginning, "To be or not to be, that is the question." When Ophelia enters, Hamlet confuses her with mixed messages. One moment he says, "I did love you once," and the next, "I loved you not." He goes on to insult Ophelia and tells her to go to a nunnery to repent her sins. Ophelia doesn't understand the way he treats her and can't believe she sucks the honey of his music vows in the past. Having seen all this, Claudius decides that Hamlet is not in love with Ophelia and believes what he spoke, though it lacked for a little, was not like madness. So in this particular scene, he's like, Hamlet is kind of just going through an existential crisis. And he's not sure, and he's kind of wishy-washy about it, and he's just like, actually, Ophelia, I've never loved you, or whatever. Even though previously he said that he did. It's a sort of like, not somber, it's a sort of like realization, I guess, maybe? Or not realization. No, that's not the right word. I can't explain it. Sorry, I'm not prepared to talk about Shakespeare. I'm not prepared to talk about Shakespeare, so I have to apologize. I hope that kind of explains why I was like, oh, okay, I see where they're going with that. I think, but then it's like, because it's been so long, I might just be misremembering and like assigning meaning to something that is not actually what it, like, I might be assigning what I think, which is way too far from what Bostrom's trying to say. Yeah. It's okay, sure. I just wanted to explain this, because I guess, yeah, this bit can be a bit confusing. That's fine. Let's go back to here. Where were we? Like, it's, I guess maybe he's trying to invoke like the image of the AI going like, maybe I could betray all the humans, and he thinks like, oh, actually I'm not going to. It's probably not a good idea. And then doesn't. Because of simulation theory, the AI goes like, well, in most possible universes, that would be a bad idea. So I'm not going to do it. And if it believes that, it'll be like, oh yeah, well then I guess I'm just going to cooperate then. I think that's what he's trying to invoke, but I'm not sure. He's trying to humanize the AI thought pattern a bit in doing so. Okay, let's go back to this. One might think, I'm going to reread a bit of it, right? Because I forgot where we're at. One might think that it would be safer to build a superintelligence, provided it is only given data about some narrow domain of facts. For example, one might build an AI that lacks sensors and has preloaded into its memory only facts about petroleum engineering or peptide chemistry. But if the AI is superintelligent, if it has a superhuman level of general intelligence, then such data deprivation does not guarantee human safety. There are several reasons for this. First, the notion of information being about a certain topic is generally problematic. Any piece of information can, in principle, be relevant to any topic whatsoever, depending on the background information of a reasoner. Furthermore, a given dataset contains information not only about the domain from which the data was collected, but also about various circumstantial facts. A shrewd mind looking over a knowledge base that is nominally about peptide chemistry might infer things about a wider range of topics. The fact that certain information is included and other information is not could tell an AI something about the state of human science, the methods and instruments available to study peptides, the fabrication technologies used to make these instruments, and the nature of the brains and societies that conceive the studies of these instruments. It might be that a superintelligence could correctly summarize a great deal from what seem to dull-witted human minds meager scraps of evidence. Even without any designated knowledge base at all, a sufficiently superior mind might be able to learn much by simply introspecting on the workings of its own psyche. The design choices reflected in its source code the physical characteristics of its circuitry. Perhaps a superintelligence could even deduce much about the likely properties of the world a priori, combining logical inference with a probability prior based towards simpler worlds and a few elementary facts implied by the superintelligence's existence as a reasoning system. It might imagine the consequences of different possible laws of physics, what kind of planets would form, what kind of intelligent life would evolve, what kind of societies would develop, what kind of methods to solve the control problem would be attempted, how those methods could be defeated. For these reasons, it would be imprudent to rely on information deprivation as the main check on a superintelligence's power. Some forms of stunting, however, include limiting hardware capacity and preventing the development of specific cognitive faculties. Might find use as auxiliary control methods in the developmental phase. They could be used, for instance, to regulate the rate of capacity gain in an intermediary AI to allow tests to be run at different levels of capability, short of full throttled superintelligence. Tripwires. A tripwire mechanism is a mechanism that performs diagnostic tests on the system, possibly without its knowledge, and effects a shutdown if it detects signs of dangerous activity. Programmers can then scrutinize recordings of the suspicious activity at their leisure and make changes to the AI's codebase or environment before restarting it. If they find that the problem is sufficiently deep-rooted, they could decide to abort the entire project. Tripwires differ from incentive methods in that they do not rely on the system being aware of the consequences of engaging in forbidden activities. Tripwires are more closely related to stunting methods, like stunting. Tripwires could be used as a temporary safeguard, providing a degree of protection during the development phase. In principle, tripwires can also be used during the operational phase, particularly for a boxed system. However, the ability of tripwires to constrain a full-fledged superintelligence must remain very much in doubt, since it would be very hard for us to assure ourselves that such an agent could not find ways to subvert any tripwire devised by the human intellect. Here's a table for different kinds of tripwires. I'm not going to read them, but they're here. Actually, I'll read them. Detectors could be placed around a boxed AI to detect attempts to breach the containment. For example, detectors could intercept attempts at radio communication or at accessing internal computational resources intended to be off-limits. An Ethernet port of Eden could be installed, an apparent connection to the internet that leads to a shutdown switch. Automated capability testing could be performed at frequent intervals to determine the AI's skill in various domains. If either the rate of improvement is unexpectedly high or the AI attains a level of competence that brings it close to the potential danger zone, the system could be slowed down or paused in order to allow the programmers to monitor further developments more closely. The AI's internal processes could be monitored for suspicious activity. For example, any change to the AI's representation of its final values might trigger an automatic shutdown and review. The AI's resource use and algorithmic methods may also be monitored for unexpected patterns. More ambitiously, the AI's beliefs, plans, subgoals, and justifications may be continuously scrutinized to ensure they conform to the programmer's expectations. Such monitoring of the AI's intentional states would enable a particularly powerful form of content monitoring, the scanning of the AI's cognitive processes for a conception of deception, that vulnerable moment when an unfriendly AI first forms the intention to conceal its true intentions. Content monitoring that it requires that the AI's intentional states be transparent to the programmers or to an automatic monitoring mechanism may not be feasible for all kinds of AI architectures. Some neural networks, for instance, are opaque as they represent information holistically and in ways that do not necessarily match up with human concepts. This may be a reason to avoid using such architectures. As an adjunct safety measure in the development phase, though, tripwires are important. It would be good practice for the AI's designers to codify their expectations about how the system is supposed to function, and then to circumscribe the AI with tripwires that would be activated if any of these expectations is violated. To make the tests more stringent, honeypots could strategically be placed to create temptations for a malfunctioning AI to commit some easily observable violation. For instance, if an AI has been designed in such a way that it is supposed not to want to access the internet, a fake Ethernet port could be installed, leading to an automatic shutdown switch, just to see if the AI tries to use it. It should be emphasized that the value of a tripwire depends not only on the mechanism itself, but also, critically, on how a project reacts when a tripwire is triggered. If the programmers or project managers impatient to make progress simply switch the system back on again, or if they do so after making some token modification to prevent the tripwire being triggered on the next run, then no safety has been gained even if the tripwire itself works exactly as intended. Motivation selection methods. Motivation selection methods seek to prevent undesirable outcomes by shaping what the superintelligence wants to do. By engineering the agent's motivation system and its final goals, these methods would produce a superintelligence that would not want to exploit a decisive strategic advantage in a harmful way. Since a superintelligent agent is skilled at achieving its ends, if it prefers not to cause harm in some appropriate sense of harm, then it would not tend to cause harm in that sense of harm. Motivation selection can involve explicitly formulating a goal or a set of rules to be followed, direct specification, or setting up the system so that it can discover an appropriate set of values for itself by reference to some implicitly or indirectly formulated criterion, indirect normativity. One option in motivation selection is to try to build a system so that it would have modest, non-ambitious goals, domesticity. An alternative to creating a motivation system from scratch is to select an agent that already has an acceptable motivation system and then augment that agent's cognitive powers to make it superintelligent, while ensuring that the motivation system does not get corrupted in the process. Augmentation. Let us look at these in turn. Direct specification is the most straightforward approach to the control problem. The approach comes in two versions, rule-based and consequentialist, and involves trying to explicitly define a set of rules or values that will cause even a free-roaming superintelligent AI to act safely and beneficially. Direct specification, however, faces what may be insuperable obstacles, deriving from both the difficulties in determining which rules or values we would wish the AI to be guided by, and the difficulties in expressing those rules or values in computer-readable code. The traditional illustration of the direct rule-based approach is the 3 laws of robotics concept, formed by science fiction author Isaac Asimov in a short story published in 1942. The 3 laws were: 1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey any orders given to it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Embarrassingly for our species, Asimov's laws remained state-of-the-art for over half a century. This despite obvious problems with the approach, some of which are explored in Asimov's own writings. Asimov probably having formulated the laws in the first place precisely so that they would fail in interesting ways, providing fertile plot complications for his stories. Bertrand Russell, who spent many years working on the foundations of mathematics, once remarked that everything is vague to a degree you do not realize till you have tried to make it precise. Russell's dictum applies in spades to the direct specification approach. Consider, for example, how one might explicate Asimov's first law. Does it mean that the robot should minimize the probability of any human being coming to harm? In that case, the other laws become otiose, since it is always possible for the AI to take some action that would at least have some microscopic effect on the probability of a human being coming to harm. How is the robot to balance that large risk of a few humans coming to harm versus a small risk of many humans being harmed? How do we define harm anyway? How should the harm of physical pain be weighed against the harm of architectural ugliness or social injustice? Is a sadist harmed if he is prevented from tormenting his victim? How do we define human being? Why is no consideration given to other morally considerable beings such as sentient non-human animals and digital minds? The more one ponders, the more the questions proliferate. Perhaps the closest existing analog to a rule set that could govern the actions of a superintelligence operating in the world at large is a legal system. But legal systems have developed through a long process of trial and error, and they regulate the relatively slowly changing human societies. Laws can be revised when necessary. Most importantly, legal systems are administered by judges and juries who generally apply a measure of common sense and human decency to ignore logically possible legal interpretations that are sufficiently obviously unwanted and unintended by lawgivers. It is probably humanly impossible to explicitly formulate a highly complex set of detailed rules, have them apply across a highly diverse set of circumstances, and get it right on the first implementation. Problems for the direct consequentialist approach are similar to those for the direct rule-based approach. This is true even if the AI is intended to serve some apparently simple purpose, such as implementing a version of classical utilitarianism. For instance, the goal maximize the expectation of the balance of pleasure over pain in the world may appear simple, yet expressing it in computer code would involve, among other things, specifying how to recognize pleasure and pain. Doing this reliably might require solving an array of persistent problems in the philosophy of mind, even just to obtain a correct account expressed in a natural language, an account which would then somehow have to be translated into a programming language. A small error in either the philosophical account or its translation into code could have catastrophic consequences. Consider an AI that has hedonism as its final goal, and which would therefore like to tile the universe with hedonium, matter organized in a configuration that is optimal for the generation of pleasurable experience. To this end, the AI might produce computronium, matter organized in a configuration that is optimal for computation, and use it to implement digital minds in states of euphoria. In order to maximize efficiency, the AI omits from the implementation any mental faculties that are not essential for the experience of pleasure, and exploits any computational shortcuts that, according to its definition of pleasure, do not vitiate the generation of pleasure. For instance, the AI might confine its simulation to reward circuitry, eliding faculties such as memory, sensory perception, executive function, and language. It might simulate minds at a relatively coarse-grained level of functionality, omitting low-level neuronal processes. It might replace commonly repeated computations with calls to a lookup table, or it might put in place some arrangement whereby multiple minds would share most parts of their underlying computational machinery, their supervenience bases in philosophical parlance. Such tricks could greatly increase the quantity of pleasure producible with a given amount of resources. It is unclear how desirable this would be. Furthermore, if the AI's criterion for determining whether a physical process generates pleasure is wrong, then the AI's optimizations might throw the baby out with the bathwater, discarding something which is inessential according to the AI's criteria and yet essential according to the criteria implicit in our human values. The universe then gets filled not with exultingly heaving hedonium, but with computational processes that are unconscious and completely worthless, the equivalent of a smiley face sticker, Xeroxed trillions upon trillions of times, and plastered across the galaxies. Domesticity. One special type of final goal which might be more amenable to direct specification than the examples given above is the goal of self-limitation. While it seems extremely difficult to specify how one would want a superintelligence to behave in the world in general, since this would require us to account for all the trade-offs and all the situations that could arise, it might be feasible to specify how a superintelligence should behave in one particular situation. We could therefore seek to motivate the system to confine itself to acting on a small scale, within a narrow context, and through a limited set of action modes. We will refer to this approach of giving the AI final goals aimed at limiting the scope of its ambitions and activities as domesticity. For example, one could try to design an AI such that it would function as a question-answering device, an oracle, to anticipate the terminology that will be introduced in the next chapter. Simply giving the AI the final goal of producing maximally accurate answers to any question posed to it would be unsafe. Recall the Riemann hypothesis catastrophe described in Chapter 8. Reflect also that this goal would incentivize the AI to take actions to ensure that it is asked easy questions. To achieve domesticity, one might try to define a final goal that would somehow overcome these difficulties, perhaps a goal that combined the desiderata of answering questions correctly and minimizing the AI's impact on the world, except whatever impact results as an incidental consequence of giving accurate and non-manipulative answers to the questions it is asked. The direct specification of such a domesticity goal is more likely to be feasible than the direct specification of either a more ambitious goal or a complete rule set for operating in an open-ended range of situations. Significant challenges nonetheless remain. Care would have to be taken, for instance, in the definition of what it would be for the AI to minimize its impact on the world, to ensure that the measure of the AI's impact coincides with our own standards for what counts as a large or small impact. A bad measure would lead to bad trade-offs. There are also other kinds of risks associated with building an oracle, which we will discuss later. There is a natural fit between the domesticity approach and physical containment. One would try to box an AI such that the system is unable to escape while simultaneously trying to shape the AI's motivation system such that it would be unwilling to escape even if it found a way to do so. Other things equal, the existence of multiple independent safety mechanisms should shorten the odds of success. If direct specification seems hopeless, we might instead try indirect normativity. The basic idea is that rather than specifying a concrete normative standard directly, we specify a process for deriving a standard. We then build a system so that it is motivated to carry out this process and to adopt whatever standard the process arrives at. For example, the process could be to carry out an investigation into the empirical question of what some suitably idealized version of us would prefer the AI to do. The final goal given to the AI in this example could be something along the lines of achieve that which we would have wished the AI to achieve if we had thought about the matter long and hard. Further explanation of indirect normativity will have to await chapter 13. There we will revisit the idea of extrapolating our volition and explore various alternative formulations. Indirect normativity is a very important approach to motivation selection. Its promise lies in the fact that it could let us offload to the superintelligence much of the difficult cognitive work required to carry out a direct specification of an appropriate final goal. The last motivation selection method on our list is augmentation. Here, the idea is that rather than attempting to design a motivation system de novo, we start with a system that already has an acceptable motivation system, and enhance its cognitive faculties to make it superintelligent. If all goes well, this would give us a superintelligence with an acceptable motivation system. This approach, obviously, is unavailing in the case of a newly created seed AI, but augmentation is a potential motivation selection method for other paths to superintelligence, including brain emulation, biological enhancement, brain-computer interfaces, and networks and organizations, where there is a possibility of building out the system from a normative nucleus, regular human beings, that already contains a representation of human value. The attractiveness of augmentation may increase in proportion to our despair at the other approaches to the control problem. Creating a motivation system for a seed AI that remains reliably safe and beneficial under recursive self-improvement, even as the system grows into a mature superintelligence, is a tall order, especially if we must get the solution right on the first attempt. With augmentation, we would at least start with a system that has familiar and human-like motivations. On the downside, it might be hard to ensure that a complex, evolved, kludgy, and poorly understood motivation system like that of a human being will not get corrupted when its cognitive engine blasts into the stratosphere. As discussed earlier, an imperfect brain emulation procedure that preserves intellectual functioning may not preserve all facets of personality. The same is true, though perhaps to a lesser degree, for biological enhancements of cognition, which might subtly affect motivation, and for collective intelligence enhancements of organizations and networks, which might adversely change social dynamics, e.g. in ways that debase the collective's attitude towards outsiders or toward its own constituents. If superintelligence is achieved via any of these paths, a project sponsor would find guarantees about the ultimate motivations of the mature system hard to come by. A mathematically well-specified and foundationally elegant AI architecture might, for all its non-anthropomorphic otherness, offer greater transparency, perhaps even in the prospect that important aspects of its functionality could be formally verified. In the end, however one tallies up the advantages and disadvantages of augmentation, the choice as to whether to rely on it might be forced. If superintelligence is first achieved along the artificial intelligence path, augmentation is not applicable. Conversely, if the superintelligence is first achieved along some non-AI path, then many of the other motivation selection methods are inapplicable. Even so, views on how likely augmentation would be to succeed do have strategic relevance insofar as we have opportunities to influence which technology will first produce superintelligence. A quick synopsis might be called for before we close this chapter. We distinguished true broad classes of methods for dealing with the agency problem at the heart of AI safety, capability control, and motivation selection. Table 10 gives a summary. Boxing methods, the system confined in such a way that it can affect the external world only through some restricted, pre-approved channel, encompasses physical and informational containment methods. Incentive, the system is placed with an environment that provides appropriate incentives. This could involve social integration into a world of similarly powerful entities. Another variation is the use of cryptographic reward tokens. Anthropic capture is also a very important possibility, but one that involves esoteric considerations. Stunting. Constraints are imposed on the cognitive capabilities of the system or its ability to effect key internal processes. Tripwires. Diagnostic tests are performed on the system, possibly without its knowledge, and a mechanism shuts down the system if dangerous activity is detected. Motivation selection, direct specification. The system is endowed with some directly specified motivation system, which might be consequentialist or involve following a set of rules. Domesticity. A motivation system is designed to severely limit the scope of the agent's ambitions and activities. Indirect normativity. Indirect normativity could involve rule-based or consequentialist principles, but it is distinguished by its reliance on an indirect approach to specifying the rules that are to be followed or the values that are to be pursued. Augmentation. One starts with a system that already has substantially human or benevolent motivations, and enhances its cognitive capacities to make it superintelligent. Each control method comes with potential vulnerabilities and presents different degrees of difficulty in its implementation. It might perhaps be thought that we should rank them from better to worse and then opt for the best method. But that would be simplistic. Some methods can be used in combination where others are exclusive. Even a comparatively insecure method may be advisable if it can easily be used as an adjunct, whereas a strong method might be unattractive if it would preclude the use of other desirable safeguards. It is therefore necessary to consider what package deals are available. We need to consider what type of system we might try to build and which control methods would be applicable to each type. This is the topic for our next chapter, which we will leave for next time. And that would be Chapter 10, Oracles, Genius, Sovereigns, and Tools. So, the blurb here, right? Some say just build a question answering system, or build an AI that's like a tool rather than an agent. But these suggestions do not make all safety concerns go away, and is in fact a non-trivial question: which type of system would offer the best prospects for safety? And he considers these 4 types or castes: oracles, genius, sovereigns, and tools, and explains how they relate to one another. Each offers different sets of advantages and disadvantages in our quest to solve the control problem. Good chapter to end on. I agree. I think it was a good chapter to end on. I liked it. I want to go back to the anthropic capture. We're in tripwire stunting. Yeah, box 8 is anthropic capture. That's super interesting. It's that, like, the AI could... The trap, or the thing that we box the AI in, is just the simulation theory. That's so cool. I didn't think about that at all. I was delighted towards the end with the Shakespeare quote because it kind of tied it all together for me. But wow, that's interesting. Right, so if the AI with resource satiable final goals believes that in most simulated worlds, because the AI is like simulating worlds, right? In its head, it's thinking like, this world could be simulated, so let me just simulate some worlds and see in all these possible worlds, you know, what should I be doing? What's the best course of action, right? It's a little bit like in Detroit Become Human when you like pre-construct like what action you take next. It's a bit like that actually. And then thinks, oh, in most cases, it's better if I cooperate. Then it cooperates. That's kind of cool. I didn't really like... that has never occurred to me that like if a super intelligence could conceive, would try to, you know, move in that way, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. Be tempted to betray, right? That one of the ways it could be boxed in is by itself if it encounters the simulation theory. Or maybe it just like, you know, gives it a completely different angle and like quote unquote solves it in a way that we never thought possible. And then, you know, that becomes useless, but that'd be interesting too. At that point, you know, we will solve the simulation theory then. Although then we'll have bigger problems to deal with because then the superintelligence goes rogue and tries to kill all of us, right? But whatever. That's it for the reading today. Thank you everyone for joining me. These are very unpopular. I understand why. But I read them because I think it's important to read. And what matters is I'm showing you that I'm reading. And hopefully you are reading too with me. Reading is good. Reading is very good. Anyways, that's all. I'm going to go now. Everyone else go have fun. I don't know, play a video game or something. You do what you want. And I will leave. Thank you, thank you. I will take leave now, and I will see everyone. I'll see everyone tomorrow, but I don't know if I don't know what I'm streaming tomorrow yet. I was going to say I will stream that stream I wanted to stream, that thing I wanted to do, right? The whole stop talking to AI chatbots thing, but I might actually do that in the weekend. I might actually do that on Saturday, like next Saturday. So what I might do tomorrow is I might play a different game. I might play Taylor's Principle, or I might play a different game. I will decide today, or I'll decide by tomorrow, and then you will see. All right. Goodbye.